Midcoast Community Council. Scott, would you call the roll?
Greg,
Here.
Claire, here, Gus, not here yet. Ann, but I need to ask Ann a question. Is Ann voting or just present?
Just present.
Okay, I'm gonna say remote, not voting. Kimberly, you're here.
Here.
I'm here. Dan?
Here. All right, Scott, so you heard about Ann. Gus will be here about 8:45, but he is going to attend.
Okay.
And I would just like to make an announcement that it's good to be back. It's a little bit like when you had that bad toothache and you went to a dentist and he fixed it. It feels better than if you'd never had a toothache before.
It's like a miracle.
Yeah, except it took a month. So glad to be back. I'm operating with a compromised computer here. The first thing is Board of Supervisors report and reports from other government officials. We have the emeritus attendee, Michael O'Neill from the supervisor's office, who, by the way, has forwarded us the usual written report, which I posted to the website, like 5 p.m. So nobody's had a chance to see what it says, but it's on there. I did not, by the way, post the Democratic Club announcement of that meeting because I have a question about the appropriateness of the MCC posting.
I just sending it because it's open to the public, nonpartisan, you know what I mean, but
You go ahead.
it's an interest of
Go ahead and announce
interest, So good evening, everybody. Welcome to October 11th and this weekend's Pumpkin Festival coming up. So just kind of a repass of stuff that's going on. Flu clinics and COVID-19 vaccinations are available. They're recommending that everyone that is eligible get both vaccines. They're available from healthcare providers and pharmacies, and use the name vaccines.gov to find a place near you, and then you can make an appointment. And then if you don't have health coverage or need a flu, you can call the county health at 650-573-2877 or email smchealth@smc.gov. But like Greg said, this is also on the website, these links. And I also sent them, I see Michelle's here, I sent them to Michelle this week. Secured property tax bills are available to view and pay online. So your secured annual property tax bills can now be viewed and paid on the tax collector's website, tax.smcgov.org. The first installment is due November 1st, and a 10% penalty will be added if you don't pay until December 11th. After you pay after December 11th. Let's see, and the tax collector's office is open from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. West Nile virus cases are on the rise. Let's see, are on the rise in California. There's been no human cases in San Mateo County, but I guess they have found them in a bird or two. While the risk of serious illness is low for most people, older adults and immunocompromised people are at higher risk for severe disease. So if you do, report any dead birds to the state hotline at 877-968-2473 or submit a report. Okay. We're looking again for members of different commissions on disabilities, etc. in San Mateo County. You can go to the website. Celebrate Latinx Heritage Month, September 15th through October 15th. And we're still looking for people to work for the 2024 primary election for president in March. And they are paying, I believe they're somewhere around 20-something bucks an hour. And they're going to be holding interviews in October via Zoom. And then there is a veterans lunch on November 9th, 2023. And something I heard too late to put on the report is the Murata Bridge detour should be removed pedestrian detour should be removed by the end of the month, pending the weather. If it really rains, they won't be able to do the asphalting, but there's a ribbon cutting being planned for the Murata Bridge. So that's all I got. Anything from
Questions, Claire?
Can you
invite us to participate in the ribbon cut?
Oh, yeah, I already put you on the list.
Okay, thank you.
The dates to be determined
Right.
because if it and there's actually paving is scheduled, but if it really rains, you know what I mean?
I
It
mean,
ain't gonna
everything's
be
gonna go
happening.
wrong.
But I would think sometime the end of October, first part of November, is we estimate.
Any other councils present here have questions? Feeling that, Sid, I saw your hand is up, now your hand is down. I'm gonna assume
Because
that
he
means.
answered it. I was going to ask him what was the date, but he
Don't tell
doesn't.
us that. If he's already answered it, save the
Yeah.
time.
I know.
Okay.
That's why I put my
Uh,
hand down.
All right, so now,
There's a-
now our hand is up again, but I think she
Oh,
meant.
no, sorry. I think sometimes Greg, Fooey, what happened here?
Okay, are you done, Sid?
I was done, but I think you put my hand down when I was putting it down. So
I did
anyway,
not touch it. I
he
did
didn't.
not.
Okay, then I bumped my screen twice. Sorry.
All right, I think you're off the, oh, is that a hand raised? No. All right, I think you're off the hook, Mike. Thank you.
All right,
I see we have the counselor emeritus from Half Moon Bay, Harvey Rohrback, in attendance. Harvey, do you have an update for us?
Yes, I do. In case you live under a rock and haven't realized it, this upcoming weekend is the Pumpkin Festival, and transportation is going to be a real mess. If you can bike to the festival, that would be desirable. If you can walk, if you're in that good a shape, that's another thing you can do. So if you plan on attending, it would be wonderful if you didn't take a car, but if you have to take a car, there will be parking available. So it's the world champion pumpkin will be on display. So we're looking forward to that. The city of Half Moon Bay, as well as the city of Pacifica, have agreed to pass through $20,000 each to the Half Moon Bay Review and Pescadero Pebble. This is an endeavor to keep local news working. It's important that we have our local news independent of social media, which, in case you haven't realized, it can be very contentious and unproductive at times. I've been subscribing to the Review for 25 years now. I can't say I always agree with everything, but I'm really, really grateful that it exists. And now the Pacifica Tribune is part of that news group. So it's something we need to support. In case you also have lived under a rock, the Zoom bombing is a big feature, if you want to call it that, of public meetings in the last month or so. It's been disgusting how anti-Semitic and racist public comments have gotten into the Pacifica City Council, San Mateo City Council. Half Moon Bay is trying to be proactive. We discussed this at our last city council meeting, and we've agreed that there will be an early warning about hateful and offensive speech, and the mayor or the city clerk will have the ability, after a second warning, to cut off any speakers. We've been lucky so far that we haven't had any remote hateful speech, but we're prepared. And we just, it's just incredibly offensive when it happens. My last announcement has to do with Green Foothills is sponsoring its yearly set of advocacy meetings. They meet on one Saturday a month, and you can learn how to advocate for environmental issues. Green Foothills is a wonderful organization, and this is an opportunity. I know a few people have taken advantage of it in the past and have learned a lot about how to advocate for the environment. If you go to their website, you can sign up for their series of meetings. That's all I got. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Couple of things, Harvey. So we're not living under a rock, but we are living under a pumpkin. I did a few weeks back get in touch with County Council as well as the City of Pacifica and discuss the issue of the hate speech and how we're going to respond. Supposedly the county is going to issue us some guidelines, Mike, but I haven't seen them yet. Okay, so anyway, I've been in touch with Tim Fox and, as I said, officials elsewhere. So we'll deal with it when it happens, and we have an appropriate, I believe, response, but we have to allow free speech. Okay, questions from the council, Claire?
Harvey, is this on?
I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's on. It's on.
My usual question, what's the city and what's the county? I heard that the county had given money to the newspaper in Half Moon Bay and in Pacifica. Did the city also give money, or is that the same money?
It's the same money. It's has to be sort of laundered through the city. But
Okay.
it's Measure K money ultimately. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Kimberly had a question. We'll get around.
I have two questions, Harvey. The first one also is about the grant that goes to the review. The first thing that occurred to me, especially in light of Supervisor Mueller's recent op-ed in the Pacifica Tribune, is whether this presents a conflict of interest. With the city and the county giving funds to media, that to me sends up a red flag. What are your thoughts on that?
It's certainly better to have a local newspaper than not to have a local newspaper. And if we don't help them, they're going to join a lot of other local newspapers that have gone under. So there is a risk of conflict of interest. I respect the current editorial board to try to make sure that they're not beholden to their funding sources. So in total, I think we need to support the local newspaper. So.
Other question, Kimberly had a second question.
I had a second question, and that is regarding the hate speech. I actually happened to be present during that Zoom bombing in Pacifica. It was horrible, and I had to cut my sound off, and I felt bad for the people who couldn't. So at Pacifica's last meeting, they actually chose to not allow Zoom comments, which they didn't really warn the public in advance. So no one who attended on Zoom at the last meeting was able to comment because of the decision made during the special session prior to the regular meeting. And I don't know if that will continue. I know that they're looking at options, but I guess I'm concerned, and I also, that we preserve people who are attending on Zoom, preserve their access to be able to comment during a public meeting. For the Midcoast Community Council, just for the rest of us here, I wonder if, and Harvey, maybe you know the answer, if we're held to the same rules as a city council in regard to having to allow public comment and for hate speech and the method in which we cut it off. Do we have greater leeway to stop that if it should occur?
I would just comment, I have an opinion, and maybe I didn't share it with the entire MCC, or did I? From Tim Fox?
Not that I recall.
Okay, so it's evolving, it's not final, and that's why I probably didn't share it. The answer is unclear at this time. The other strategies that have been used are to pause the meeting and to take a vote, to restructure the agenda, to move public comment to the end of the agenda. You follow me? We'll still allow it, but not disrupt the orderly transition. You mentioned another coping mechanism was to allow comment by persons present in public, but not on Zoom. And I'm wondering if we can't combine those to have the people in public present at the normal time and the Zoom people later. But let's just stay tuned. But we are aware of this issue and it can be disruptive. And there are also some guidelines. Anybody speaking has to be speaking either on an agenda topic, or if they're using the open public comment, they have to be speaking on an issue which is within the jurisdiction of the council. Okay, so if somebody's making comments, and I, fortunately for me, didn't hear them, but they have to do with the racial and ethnic makeup of the community, that is not an agenda item that we have jurisdiction on. So those comments don't have to be allowed.
Okay, I just, I don't want to belabor this, but for Pacifica, a big issue for them was that their staff then had to include those in the minutes. And it was incredibly disturbing to have to do that. So, you know, that's another aspect of it to
Well,
think
fortunately, you're in luck because we barely have minutes.
about.
See, luck.
That wasn't
You're in luck.
nice.
Okay, now,
All right, that's all I've got.
all right,
Thanks.
did you have anything, Scott?
So I just want to ask part of this real quick. What was the name of the newspaper again for your second item? It's just the review?
The newspaper that's in Half Moon Bay is the Half Moon Bay Review and Pescadero Pebble.
Okay,
The Pacifica Tribune is in Pacifica.
okay, ours is H&B Review, okay. And then I was gonna ask you where the hate speech was coming from, and it was a Pacifica City Council meeting.
No, it's been happening to bodies all over the county, I
Yeah.
think. Is that
All
correct?
over the state. It's happened all over the state.
Okay, okay. I'll just say, all right.
That all your questions?
Yes.
Widespread.
All right, Dan, you had a question for Harvey?
Yeah, Harvey, it's regarding, I have similar concerns as Kimberly and regarding to the conflict of interest. Question. It's my understanding that I think it's the large Mercury News Agency kind of operates Pacifica Tribune. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought some other corporate entity, you know, maybe in the past couple of years purchased the Half Moon Bay Review. And so if that's true, do you have the name of that large corporate entity?
That large corporate entity is very small. It's a public benefit corporation, which means it exists, although it in principle can make a profit, it's supposed to be money that benefits the community. The name is, I believe, the Coastside News Group. It runs Half Moon Bay Review and the Pacifica Tribune. They bought them about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, roughly then. Before that, the Review was owned by a real large corporate entity that was headquartered in Arizona. So now it's local control.
So the Mercury News Group doesn't own Pacifica?
No,
Anymore?
no,
Years ago.
no, not anymore.
Okay. So, are there any conditions to the subsidizing the Half Moon Bay Review? That the county or the cities? I don't know what conditions would be appropriate. I'm just asking the question. Are there any conditions, or it's just here's the money and then, you know, hopefully stay in business? Because we like you.
I'm not aware of any conditions that were imposed.
Okay,
Any other questions, Dan?
that's all I have.
All right, Sid, we have a question from you. Sid
Yeah.
Young?
I have a few questions, but reading the Bay Area News, Coastside News Group, I guess they're called. They are Rich Klein and Lenny Mendonca, and I don't know who else, but they're, you know, wealthy individuals that live on the coast. And like my brother bought a bookstore after Amazon had already killed off Borders Books, and he still went out and bought a bookstore, but nobody bailed him out. And these people can just use this as a tax write-off. So I don't understand why they've got their hand out in front of the community when there's so many needed projects on the Midcoast that haven't been funded. And yet these wealthy guys are getting, $40,000 for 2 newspapers that they bought foolishly after all. A lot of national newspapers are folding. So I just don't understand it unless you guys do put some conditions on it, like maybe dropping the paywall for people, older people that can't afford the $66 a year subscription, etc. And you said laundered through the cities. That's a really good word, because they couldn't give this kind of money, Measure K money, direct to a newspaper.
Sid, there's supposed to be a question in here. Of course, your
Okay,
comment
my question is, Harvey, are you going to advocate that they drop their paywall for people that need to be subsidized, like they're reaching out to be subsidized? That's my question. Will you recommend that to Half Moon Bay? Or is the money already changed hands?
Far as I know, the money, if it hasn't changed, is going to change imminently. And the paywall is necessary to support the newspaper.
But the handout from the government isn't necessary, is my point. Okay, so Committee for Green Foothills, now just Green Foothills, it's called the Leadership Academy, and it's to grow community advocates. So I do recommend that to a lot of people. And this year, I don't think they're charging any tuition, is my understanding. And as far as back on the Zoom bombing and hate speech issue that you brought up, I was listening on the Pacifica City Council meeting too. And first of all, the first guy who talked, somebody brought up the noise from SFO, and he said the only good thing that the airplanes provided was to get people out of the country. And he used the N-word, and he also mentioned something that was anti-Semitic, but
You don't need to repeat
they
this.
stopped really quickly.
the question is, these things you're saying may be valid public comments, but we are focused on asking Harvey questions.
I know.
in his
So
jurisdiction.
when that happened and everybody went, oh, then they went quickly into closed session. And I assume they had an attorney that was there that advising them what they had to do. And I don't think it's right for them just to cut off Zoom commenters, but is the city council doing the same thing, or you don't know yet?
We have made a policy that at the beginning of remote public comment, there will be a warning. And if hateful speech, and I understand that hateful speech is supposedly protected by the First Amendment, but it's off comment, it's off topic.
Right.
If that kind of speech occurs after the initial warning, and the mayor or who's ever in charge of the meeting will then issue a second warning, and if the commenter continues, then they'll be cut off.
Okay, and that's just for Zoom. If they show up in public and do that, they can use their 3 minutes or whatever it is. Or
No,
they'll.
I don't think we're going to distinguish between the two. It's just that the most likely do that will be doing it remotely so that their faces won't show.
Exactly.
I'd be very surprised that hateful speech would be occurring in face-to-face.
Live public comment. Okay, my last question for you. You said traffic will be a mess for Pumpkin Festival. Do you know if it's still one way up the hill where those orange cones are? Are they going to remove those for Pumpkin Festival traffic? I don't know if you've left town lately, but the last time I went over 92, those orange cones were already still on that hill going up from Santa's Tree Farm to the top where the sinkhole was. Do you know if they're doing anything about that, or you just expect a lot of traffic because it's this big pumpkin?
I have no information from Caltrans about their removing the cones. My guess is that they'll still be there this week.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, any other public officials here to update the MCC? Seeing none, it's time for open public comment. We already had some comments from Sid. I asked the council if any of the members of the council have comments. Seeing none, do we have members of the public wishing to make a public comment on items not on today's agenda? Sid Young. Is your hand up?
Yes, my hand was up and now I've unmuted myself. I tried to find the button, but the closed captioning was covering the thing I was going to mention as a public official. I went to the last week. Oh no. Yeah, it was last week. Oral arguments happened at the down in San Jose at the Superior Court, Half Moon Bay's lawsuit against the Granada Sanitary District and the Montero Water and Sanitary District. And it was an interesting time, and they will be giving their decision in 90 days. So that's all I have to report right now.
Okay, so that was your update as a director of the.
Yes, it was, and I don't
Water and
have-
Sanitary District. Okay.
I don't have public anything
Okay.
to
All right, thank you. I see no other public comments. And so I now move on to the regular agenda item, and we have present with us at least two members of the planning department. Shanda Singh, I hope I
You have
pronounced.
the consent.
Oh, consent agenda. All right, so let me just comment on this, and I apologize. At the last meeting, we had minutes of September 13th, which needed some work. Kimberly provided a cogent update of that. Those minutes are now posted on the website. The minutes of September 27th, I didn't see until shortly before the meeting, and I found a typo. So I want to, and I really need to read the whole thing. So I want to pull the minutes from September 27th from the consent agenda. But I would make a motion that we include the minutes of September 13th in the consent agenda and approve those now that they have been updated. What does the
Second.
council think?
I
Kimberly?
second the motion.
She seconds that
Well,
motion.
it's
So the consent agenda has by motion
not-
being
not-
revised. It's being revised. The agenda is being revised. And what we're suggesting is that we approve the minutes of September 13th, not September 27th.
Yeah, I recommend that you do all that the next time, just because you're changing the agenda.
That's correct. And it says when we post these things, the agendas can be changed. And by a vote of the council, they can be. And that's what we're proposing to do.
Or we can simply
Well-
pull one set of minutes. Do you prefer?
So you don't like the idea.
What I'm saying, essentially you're jamming the other thing in that nobody,
The minutes of September 13th were
Time.
posted last meeting.
it's fine, but it wasn't posted on the agenda, so.
Okay, that's
people
correct.
We're not alerted to look for it.
Okay. What
That's
opinions?
my point.
Opinions here?
And I don't think we have anything to lose.
We have a motion and a second.
Give it another 2 weeks.
We can vote against it if we don't want.
Sure, you don't want it to just speak up. Okay, so I guess we'll take the vote.
Okay, Greg,
I approve the minutes of September 13th.
Claire,
Yes,
What are we voting for?
We're voting on whether or not we approve the
Yes.
minutes of September 13th.
I vote yes. Dan,
Kimberly and Dan
you will
vote.
know if you want.
Abstain because it's
Okay.
out of order.
I'll
Okay.
write that down.
I believe we were in order the way we handled it by calling for a vote. All right, on to the regular agenda. Thank you for pointing out that I forgot to cover the minutes. And Shanda, we now have you here to talk about the Moss Beach SR1 Congestion and Safety Improvements Project. I've made you and the other Sing co-hosts. And I turn the microphone over to you, Shanda, and look forward to your presentation.
Great, thanks so much. Let me get my presentation going and make sure that it all looks okay. Are you seeing my notes or are you seeing the slides?
We're seeing slides.
Okay, great. All right, so thank you so much for having us here today. Today we're here to discuss the Moss Beach State Route 1 Congestion and Safety Improvements Project, which is a collaboration among the County of San Mateo County Transportation Authority, and Caltrans. I'm Chanda Singh, a senior transportation planner with the County of San Mateo Planning and Building Department. And I'm joined by my colleague Bharat Singh, who's the planning services manager for the Planning and Building Department. I'm the point of contact for this project at the county, and the county is considered the sponsor of this project, meaning that we initiated its need. But this project would not be possible without the support and funding from the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, which is the implementing agency for this project. So I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Lily from the TA to introduce herself. Lily, are you there?
Yes. Good evening, members in the Midcoast Community Council and members in the public and members of the council elect. This is Liliana Price. I'm the project manager for the Transportation Authority. I pass on to Chanda.
Thanks, Lily. We're also joined by members of our project team, including our consultants from AECOM. I believe I saw Catherine and Marius and Ramsey and possibly Maria online as well, who, if you were able to attend our September 19th meeting, you met most of them as well. So I'm just going to provide a very quick overview of the project. I'm hoping that most of you were able to take a look at the materials that were all posted to our project webpage right after the meeting, and I highly encourage you to review those details as your time allows. I'll then share an overview of the open house and summarize what we heard, and then share next steps. Excuse me. So just moving on into the project overview. So this project is looking at infrastructure improvements along Highway 1 in Moss Beach, and the limits are from just south of Marine Boulevard to just north of 16th Street. This is just an aerial view of the project area. The overarching goal of this project is to improve conditions for all roadway users with a focus on safety and improving multimodal connections. It's difficult to enter across Highway 1 for people walking, biking, or driving because of the high speeds on the highway, poor visibility due to vegetation and intersection skews, and a lack of delineated space for different roadway users. So what all these existing conditions lead to are unsafe behaviors by people driving and taking their chances to turn left or enter the highway, which often leads to crashes. And this also leads to unsafe conditions and unpredictable travel times. Caltrans, as the owner and operator of the highway, sets out specific phases and requirements for a project to move from an idea to being constructed. So the phase that we're engaging in right now, which is starred on this slide, is called project initiation. The goals of project initiation are to develop what's called a project initiation document, which compiles existing and new information to present possible options to address concerns identified. So kind of address the goals I just went over. The project initiation document presents options, which are also called alternatives, in order to develop cost estimates and anticipate future environmental considerations. So once the project initiation document is complete and Caltrans is satisfied with its contents, they sign off on the concept to be studied further. And most of the detailed study and public review happens in the next phase, which is called project approval and environmental studies. After project approval and during project design and right-of-way, engineers go into even more detail about how a project would be constructed and seek further approvals to do so. And then lastly, it can be constructed. So the project considers three potential alternatives to improve safety and improve multimodal connections. There is a no project alternative, which is to build nothing and leave the highway as is. And Caltrans requires that we consider this alternative in the project initiation document. Project build alternative 1 includes a traffic signal at 16th Street with roundabouts at California Avenue and Cypress Avenue. Project build alternative 2 includes traffic signals at 16th Street, California, and Cypress. We have two separate options for addressing the 16th Street and Carlos Street intersections with Highway 1. Build alternative 1 has two separate options for a raised center median or center turn lane, and both alternative 1 and 2 include pedestrian, bicycle, and transit improvements. So again, these exhibits are all available online to review much more closely. So I'm just going to fly right through these and hope that you'll all take time to take a look. So this is a bird's eye view of Highway 1 from 16th Street to Marine Boulevard, and the different colors on the slide just represent different proposed features. And again, the legends are in the exhibits online. So just what I wanted to point out on this slide is that both alternatives have proposed walkways on the west side of Highway 1 from Marine to California to connect pedestrians to bus stops, businesses, and then crossings, so those are all shown in orange. There's also a proposed walkway on the east side of Highway 1 from 16th Street to 14th Street, which allows pedestrian access to the northbound Samtrans bus stop, which is just north of 14th Street. Both alternatives also include on-street bike lanes on Highway 1. Bike lanes provide a designated space for cyclists by striping a lane, but it's not physically separated from vehicular traffic. So in dark blue is the multimodal trail, which is on the east side of the highway from Marine to Etheldor. And this would be a class 1 bicycle and pedestrian path, meaning that it's physically separated from the highway and for people to walk and bike. So both of these are included because some people prefer to travel at fast speeds with traffic in a bike lane, whereas others, like children or older adults, might prefer slower biking and walking speeds on a separate path. We've included marked crosswalks at the intersections of Highway 1 with Cypress, Vermont, California, Etheldor, and 16th to improve access to the coast and local neighborhood businesses on either side of the highway. And the existing crossing, marked crosswalk at Virginia, would be removed with this project. Project Alternative 1 includes roundabouts at Cypress and California and a traffic signal at 16th. One of the benefits of roundabouts is that they nearly eliminate what are called broadside or T-bone collisions. So when drivers try and cross or enter the highway without enough space, sometimes they collide like this or sideswipe. So that the roundabout helps prevent those. They can also have a traffic calming effect because drivers have to slow down before they can enter the roundabout. If a pedestrian is crossing, drivers would need to yield to the pedestrian to stop, but there's no specific signal or stop sign at pedestrian crossings. Project Alternative 2 includes traffic signals at 16th Street, California, and Cypress. And with a signal, traffic should come to a complete stop to allow cars or pedestrians to make a movement. Caltrans requires that we look at signals and roundabouts for alternatives. So, and just wanted to clarify that this project is not proposing to add any new travel lanes to the highway, but we might need additional pavement to accommodate right turn lanes at the intersections for the traffic signals. This is just a close-up of Alternative 1 with the roundabout at California, just to show option A, which is on the left, includes a raised median, which would extend from California to Cypress. A raised median would further slow traffic speeds and provide space for people crossing the street, so they could cross one direction of traffic at a time. But it would also prevent turning movements from these streets in between California and Cypress, left-hand turns to go the other way on the highway. So you can make a right turn, but not a left. In option B, where there's no raised median, cross-street traffic use the center turn lane to wait and go north or south as needed. The project also includes 2 options for the intersection at 16th Street and Carlos Street in Alternative 1, which is on the left. 16th Street is connected to Carlos Street and the signal is shifted a bit south. And Alternative 2, Carlos Street is connected to 16th Street and Carlos Street is connected to 16th Street, and that's where the signal is. So people going north can turn right onto Carlos Street before reaching the signalized intersections. In both cases, the bus stop would be improved. So now I'm just going to provide some more info on the open house and presentation. So on September 19th, we held a community open house and presentation at the supervisor's office in Princeton. We promoted the event through different channels, including postcards, flyers posted at local businesses, email blasts, webpage updates, and social media updates through things like Nextdoor. The open house included large-scale exhibits with the project overview and description and the project alternative exhibits we just reviewed. And team members were stationed around the room to answer questions and hear feedback. We also had our traffic simulation videos running with a team member available to explain what was being shown and answer questions. 69 people signed in on our sign-in sheet. And we had the open house from 6 to 6:30. Did a presentation similar to what I just shared earlier, but slower and more detailed, and then continued the open house from about 7:30 to 8. We left the exhibits up at the supervisor's office through September 29th to allow stakeholders to come view them if they couldn't make the meeting, and left out comment cards as well. So now I'm just going to run through some photos just to give a sense of what the meeting was like for those who couldn't attend. So here are some of the attendees reviewing exhibits on easels. These are the large-scale project alternative exhibits. You can see Maria and Marco talking with some members of the community about what they're looking at. This is Ramsey, who is stationed both at our VISIM video, our traffic simulation video station, as well as delivered the presentation at the meeting. And here is the group of attendees seated for the presentation portion. We also sent out a post-meeting evaluation survey to gauge how effective the meeting was and, think about how we can improve for next time. 8 people responded. 6 people agreed that they had a better understanding of the improvements being recommended for study after the meeting, with 2 people sort of marking neutral and no disagreements. And then 6 also agreed that they had a better understanding of the Caltrans process and next steps. Here's just a snapshot of some of the comments we got from the post-meeting evaluation. Overall, people appreciated being able to engage with staff and learn more about the project and view the exhibits up close. We also heard feedback that can inform changes for our future outreach, including that it was really hard to hear, and recommendations for improving the question and answer portion of the presentation. So now I'll go into summarizing some of the questions and comments we received during and after the presentation and open house. So we received a little over 40 written comments. We had 10 questions and comments after the presentation on the 19th, which we answered then, and that recording is on our webpage. And then during the open house, comments and questions were directed to our individual team members. So the key themes we heard were an overall desire for the project. Most of the comments were focused on project details, which generally fell into categories of safety, operations, impacts, and people sharing what their preferences were. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about what we heard. And, I just want to preface and say that we don't have responses prepared for every question and comment. The goal of today was really to share out what we heard. And many of what we were asked, many things will be explored in some of the future phases of the project. Where we do have some thoughts, I'll share, and we can always continue discussing after this presentation with the project team members that are present. So we received a lot of feedback about the implementation approach and timeline, including a desire to see improvements constructed to our current timeline expected year of 2030, and largely due to the fact that there are pressing safety concerns that stakeholders really want to see addressed now. So stakeholders wanted to know if implementation could be expedited. They suggested phasing implementation, with some suggesting we start with Cypress Avenue and Highway 1 first. Others asked if interim solutions could be implemented and suggested things like acceleration lanes, signals, and tree trimming. We also heard a desire for the project to be implemented and coordinated with anticipated development projects. High speeds on Highway 1 were the primary safety concern brought up as part of often the request to speed up the implementation timeline. So we heard that we should look for additional ways to lower speeds, especially between 14th Street and California Avenue. People shared concerns about speeding into Moss Beach and towards the signal that is included in project alternatives 1 and 2. And there were also requests to have more law enforcement as a way to manage speeds and lower the posted speed limit signs. So, some thoughts here, just that the estimated timeline is based on a typical Caltrans process. So it's unlikely that the overall project implementation timeline could be expedited. However, there are some new state legislation and Caltrans policy that could influence whether we might be able to lower the posted speed limit signs. So we are planning to discuss that further with Caltrans and how we might be able to go about that and how that might impact the project alternatives moving forward in the next phase. We also received positive feedback on the proposed bike ped improvements and additional suggestions on how to make them safer, whether they would be safe enough as they were presented in the alternatives, and how they would impact vehicular operations. So for pedestrian safety, we received comments requesting more flashing lights at marked crossings, comments both that the medians would improve safety, but also they might decrease pedestrian safety, and questions about pedestrian safety while crossing at roundabouts and how that might impact highway operations. We also received requests for looking into underpasses so pedestrians and cyclists wouldn't be stopping highway traffic. We got feedback that Class 2 bike lanes are insufficient to make biking on the highway safe, and that a separated facility like a Class 4 cycle track would be preferable. That we should consider continuing the parallel trail on the west side of the highway north to Etheldor, and that the pedestrian walkway on the west side of the highway should be on the outer edge of the Caltrans right-of-way. And lastly, we heard that we need more bicycle and pedestrian improvements on local streets, including Airport, Cypress, and Carlos. So these suggestions around, additional project features and safety would be further detailed during the next phase. And it's one of the factors studied during environmental review is safety. The project team did explore whether a Class 4 bikeway would be appropriate on Highway 1, but ultimately we did not move forward with that because it would block access to the shoulder, which could impact access during an emergency. So that was one of the reasons we did not move forward with that recommendation. The project does include the multimodal parallel trail from Marine to Etheldor as an alternative bikeway to the Class 2 bike lanes on the highway. And the county is responsible for improvements on local streets, so those would not be added to this project, specifically since this is really about working on the highway improvements. We also received questions and comments about the intersection of 16th Street and Highway 1, including asking why we needed an intervention at all. That creating safe conditions at the signal would be challenging because of the poor sight distance and concern about an increase in rear end collisions due to cars queued on the highway, and the need to make sure we slow car speeds on the approach to the signal. We also received questions about whether the traffic would be stopped unnecessarily on the highway. We also received requests for a roundabout at this location and questions about why it was not feasible. So the signal at 16th Street is to provide a designated crossing for the coastal trail, which crosses over from the west side of the highway to the east side of this location, to provide access to the bus stops on either side of the highway, and address the known turning movement conflicts and sight distance issues for vehicles on Carlos and 16th Street. The project team did look at the feasibility of putting in a roundabout at 16th, but found that it would be not feasible due to the space constraints in the area, and combined with the change in elevation across the highway and the proximity to the creek. So if a signal is, ultimately implemented, it would be activated based on side street traffic, meaning that it would be green most of the time for Highway 1 if nobody was waiting at the cross street. And the project would include, required warning signs leading up to the signal to ensure that there is awareness that it's coming up. We also received questions about the impacts of project implementation, including how to minimize noise impacts, a request not to use any noisy traffic calming measures, to consider the impacts of lighting from the signals or any new highway lighting, especially on adjacent homes, things like, lights shining into bedrooms and minimizing overall light pollution. Stakeholders also asked us to address drainage and stormwater and any areas that currently pond in the project area. And they also asked about whether utilities would have to be relocated and who would be responsible for the cost. And then just general concerns about overall impacts during construction. So a lot of these impacts would be further detailed in the environmental phase, and any relocation of utilities and those costs and impacts would likely be part of the overall project cost. So now I'll just go into next steps. So Caltrans, the county and the Transportation Authority are working together to finish the project initiation document. Caltrans is reviewing it and is going to be providing feedback. And so we'll be making revisions based on that. And if the project initiation document is approved by Caltrans, the project, as I said before, would be eligible for future funding and future phases. The county did submit an application for the 2023 Transportation Authority Highway Program Call for Projects. And so if we are awarded, the project approval phase would begin next year, and the Transportation Authority would be the implementing agency for that. And with that, I'll just close, and we are here and available to answer questions. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, Shanda, I have 7 comments or questions, and then we have the rest of the council. First, I would like to say you guys have been doing a great job at outreach. This is an excellent presentation. From my perspective, the process of contacting the community has been well done. That's not to say everybody's going to like all the decisions that are made. I have a question about, and this is maybe outside of your area of expertise, but you're probably aware there's a middle mile broadband initiative. The state's going to be laying fiber down Highway 1 right through this area, and that's got to be completed by 2026. So I just have a concern that we're going to end up tearing up the road twice. But maybe there's nothing that can be done about it. Is there something you can comment on regarding that issue to try and consolidate utility upgrades in this area so that we don't have to do it several times?
That is something that we're thinking about as well. That project is on a different timeline. We are getting in touch. Mike and I have talked about it as well, but we are trying to learn more about the project, and Caltrans is leading that project as well. They're the ones who are seeking the, consolidated CDP to move that forward. So, given that these two projects are happening in the same area, we're hopeful that they will understand that, but it may be that we are not able to avoid that. We're going to keep looking into that.
Well, my spin on it would be, let's hope it would speed this project up because they're doing the other one anyway. And maybe they would want to save it, but that's just a hope. Stormwater management. I don't know if you're aware, we haven't yet produced our formal stormwater report, but we've had presentations on it. There's already flooding at Carlos and Etheldor in California, and things are getting worse with accelerated rainfall and climate change. I have concerns I've expressed to Caltrans about other stretches of Highway 1, like at the airport. It does not appear that the culverts that exist are designed to handle the rainfall that we already experienced. Does this project include an analysis of the watershed and climate change impacts on stormwater so that what you build will actually be passable during those storms?
I might ask if anybody from the project team can weigh in on this. I know that the project initiation document contains a stormwater data report that does talk about sort of impervious surfaces and stormwater. But I believe that most of that detailed analysis would happen in the next phase of the project. And I don't know if anybody on.
Yeah, Chanda, this is
Go ahead.
Ramsey. You're correct. The project will need to, in the next phase, evaluate the amount of work that's being done, and it would need to treat that surface water that is generated from the additional impervious and reworked areas. It's a required permit from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, but the impacts and more details will be done in the next phase.
Okay, so that's good to know. I will just caution you that there's a proposed project that's going to put 150,000 square feet of impervious surface on top of what I've come to find out is a massively useful retention basin with specially permeable rock. It's the same surface that allows Montara Mountain to have an aquifer and its own water district. That same soil exists in Moss Beach and is going to be covered over. So it's outside of the immediate scope of your project area. But if that goes through, the geologist I've spoken to feels that the runoff on Highway 1 is going to be exacerbated much greater than it currently is right now, just so you're aware of it. I wanted to just make a comment. I've seen in other cities when they propose traffic controls before they spend, and in this case, the roundabouts would be 7 million or so a piece. They do faux roundabouts as tests. They erect some temporary barriers and they see how it affects the traffic flow. I'm just encouraging you to consider using, what is it called, K-rails or some other temporary measures to simulate before you go to the trouble of spending the $7 million in each roundabout. And I'm aware back east where they've tried to put roundabouts in close proximity on roads like this, where there's a 14-to-1 ratio between Highway 1 traffic and the side streets, and they failed. This is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, for example. They had to pull out the roundabout and put in a traffic signal. So just something to think about. I guess that comment would go into the next phase comment period. As a resident of Montara, I would just hope and ask, when can we get to Montara? I know that's outside of the scope of this. If you could tell me who we ask at county planning about when they're finally going to extend this to Montara, because the population up there is much larger than Moss Beach and is still isolated. I don't need an answer now, but I'd love to know who's going to give us an answer. I would comment on the side road issue. Clearly, Caltrans is not responsible for the county roads. But what is going to happen on Carlos Street, especially with this proposed development, is going to be, it's going to have serious implications for the traffic on Highway 1. I don't see how you can do this project and how you can assess the traffic impact without doing the entirety of the Moss Beach neighborhoods and this new project together. I would just comment that another local elected official had her house burned down in Montara. It took 20 minutes for the fire department to get there. And there's a fire station on Stetson in Moss Beach that we're told will respond quickly. Now, with Carlos Street having more traffic and other impediments, I can only see things as being worse. The fire response in Montara, based on that incident, is unacceptable. So again, I see a need for a really thorough study of the increasing population and the effect of stormwater and the effect on these roads, because it's already a health and safety issue. And you said we should comment on these alternatives in coming opportunities. I assume that would include some feedback process where we could bring up things like the dark skies implications of having roundabouts, which per the federal standards I last read required lighting all night. So when will we get the opportunity to comment on the alternatives and their impact?
So, right now, this is not like technically a formal comment period, but all comments that we receive are going to be compiled and will inform the project scope for the next phase as we move into project approval and environmental and environmental. So if you have comments like that, we're noting them down right now, which will inform the next phase. There isn't, no alternative has been chosen yet. So if there are very specific details that are a consideration, certainly continuing to make those comments during the environmental phase, so they're part of the future environmental document, and they would be, there would be a formal response, is also important. But that level of detailed design wouldn't happen until much later. So all this to say is that we're making notes of the comments that you're saying now to inform the next phase. And then as we continue moving forward and alternatives, we're narrowing down into what can actually be done. That's when some of these considerations will be further fleshed out.
And whose email do we use? The new project manager you just introduced? What's the proper communication?
You can email me. It's easy. I also would just encourage you to submit through the website. That also just goes to me. So really it's, and you're welcome to, include Lily if you'd like to. I'm just compiling everything for our final project initiation documents so that we have everybody's comments sort of categorized by kind of typology to inform our next phase.
Okay, well, with that, I would go around the council first.
I think Ann was before me.
She's not here in the room, and she's not voting today, so I'm picking you.
Yeah, but she can participate.
She can participate. I'll get to her if I'm doing the room first.
Oh, okay, fine, thanks. All right, thank you, Chandra. I wanted to, in regards to not including any underpasses, which obviously would help congestion if the cars wouldn't have to stop for people crossing Highway 1. I want to direct everyone to the Federal Highway Association, .dot.gov, when then their language on underpasses, they say grade separation is most feasible and appropriate in extreme cases where pedestrians must cross roadways such as highways, high speed and high volume arteries or arterials. Yes, some of the things you mentioned as reasons to not provide underpasses. Some of them can be true, but I believe everything there could be worked around. So basically, I don't agree with those reasonings for not giving it the option when the benefit to the flow and safety is just through the roof. That said, on the underpasses, in regards to the whole process here of roundabout or the whole Moss Beach, there's so much involved, it's hard to talk about everything. But right now, I just think that our community is currently trying to decide what they think would be best. But I think that this process could be a lot more helpful to the community if we can talk more about what we have now, the existing traffic flow capacity, versus what would be a result of what you're proposing. Because you've been steering away from any data or answering any questions about backups as a result of roundabouts versus traffic lights. I want everybody to know that I have personally witnessed. I have some videos of what I believe is probably the maximum capacity of the road as approximately 20 cars per minute, and I have recorded both with long backups at 15 miles an hour or no backups with a complete perfect flow of 45 to 50 miles per hour. That high one was I think it was last year, Saturday morning, for Pumpkin Festival. So yeah, there were a lot of cars coming in, and anyway, so I'd also like to know, I'd like to know more about what the professionals here through this process think about the long backups and delays that would be created by the roundabout alternative. For the reasons that I said in the meeting, never got an answer. I thought that really should be talking about this to everybody. In full disclosure, not hiding anything. What you're proposing is forcing more cars in the roundabout, which would actually cause cars to stop on Highway 1 if there's a car in the roundabout already. The more congested you make that roundabout, obviously, the slower Highway 1 will flow. I'd also like to know what are the options to make the traffic signal alternative work more efficiently to cause the minimum backups and delays. And I'd like to know are we gonna go that route to try to make sure it's maximum efficiency, or are we gonna put in a kind of a standard program to where, okay, the light's green on Highway 1 for 3 minutes straight, and then it turns red for a minute, and then it cycles 3 minutes green, 1 minute red, 3 minutes green. So it's kind of like I know there's very many variations of a standard program, but I think that's what most of the community members are afraid of, and why they're looking at roundabouts as an alternative. But I don't think we're being really transparent to all of the negatives that are known. One of them is clearly it is true that high speed accidents, broadside collisions, absolutely, yes, they are reduced. But as a result of all these congested roundabouts, and everybody has a different style of driving, and not everybody knows how to enter them or who to yield to this. So the low speed collisions go way up. So in our only way out of here in a emergency evacuation situation, and you get the whole highway clogged up and it doesn't work at all. How often would we have incredible backups with constant collisions in this roundabout? I think that's enough. I could go into the sidewalks. I really think that over the years I've been part of the discussion on the Highway 1 for 12 years now, and I've studied some of the discussions that were even before that. That a lot in the community would really like to keep kind of the rural feel of our highway. And instead of sidewalks, personally, I think that we should be looking at safe paths. Not a sidewalk up to the road, but safe paths, kind of like a trail experience, smooth, but more of a rustic feel versus an urban feel. I know that I've heard a lot of people say, I really wanted to steer away from getting this urban transformation to the coast side. I think I really will stop there.
All right, Dan, I know you're passionate about this, and I'm aware of some people have been involved in this stuff for over 20 years.
Can we see if we can get some answers to the light programming? Are they going to ever talk about the volume of traffic that we have today?
I'm happy to weigh in and ask the project team as well on some of your comments, Dan. So I just want to make clear that the project alternatives right now do not state a preference, right, between roundabouts or signals or no build. No build is an alternative, and there is no distinction right now. It could be a sidewalk, it could be a path. We're keeping that very open because, to your point, there has been a lot of desire for keeping a certain feel for the community. So that's open in terms of sidewalk and path. In terms of the we're not trying to keep anything a secret in terms of the traffic analysis. I think what was shared at the meeting was that the preliminary analysis that was done during this phase shows that under either of the build alternatives, the side street delays go down, but the time to travel on Highway 1 increases by about 30 seconds. But wait times go down by like about 40% for the side streets. So
Can you share the
what I
data
think
that-
was shared by Ramsey during that meeting was that the actual traffic analysis would happen and transportation analysis would happen in the next phase. So there would be a much more detailed study that would be done. This is just really a preliminary study to scope out what would happen in the next phase of the project. So, in terms of the signal, making a signal work more effectively, there's no intention to have these signals be timed just to be timed. I think they'd be actuated by presence of side street traffic. So Highway 1 would get the green, the flow of traffic, and their most signal technology now is based on the presence of vehicles trying to make a movement. So I can't tell you exactly what the timing would be and how that would work. That would be if and when we got there to be addressed. In terms of, delays created by roundabouts, and I think, Ramsey, in your comment in the meeting also sort of affirmed what you were asking, which is, it could be that we study both the alternatives in detail and find that the signal outperforms the roundabout from the traffic perspective, based on what different things that we're looking for. Like a roundabout will always be safer from the crash perspective because it eliminates certain types of collisions, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best solution for all of the things that we're trying to optimize for, which are keeping the traffic moving, but also allowing people to get where they need to go, and also keeping all of the users safe, right? Like we're trying to address lots of different needs in the project goal. So again, neither alternative has been chosen. It's really about presenting things for the future study. And the project is looking at proposed volumes. So the preliminary analysis that was prepared is taking into account future volumes based on growth. And that's what the next phase's traffic study would do as well. It would look at what is anticipated volume, what is anticipated delay going to be, and how would the different alternatives perform based on that. So I'm going to pause there and see if any of my colleagues from the project team wanted to weigh in on any of Dan's comments or what I just also shared.
Jen, I think you covered it well. One thing is that it's common practice now with new signals is that if you have signals that are in the same vicinity, that they would be interconnected and work together in tandem with each other. So that's another point. It could be hardwired, or it could be monitored by, there are various ways. But the way that you explained that the signals are going to be basically actuated by the presence or absence of traffic. The other thing you mentioned too, and it could be that roundabouts do not perform as well as signals. And the Caltrans process is that they will not review the forecasting or the operational analysis until this first initiation process is complete. And during that operational analysis, the alternatives will be compared against each other. One alternative, as Chanda mentioned, is the no build. And that would be compared against the traffic signals and the roundabout in terms of time delays, speed. There are a bunch of other factors that go through it, but there would be an analysis done comparing the three alternatives. Back to you, Chanda.
Oh, back to you, Greg.
I'm polling the council members in the room. Scott, you have questions or comments?
I do have one question. So you mentioned that roundabouts reduce collisions, right? Now,
High-speed collisions.
okay, so a roundabout needs to have a minimum diameter based upon the speed at which the traffic moves on the highway. Do you believe, I know what we saw on your slides are architectural drawings, not engineering drawings on what exactly is going to happen. Do you believe you're going to be able to make roundabouts large enough for that portion of road at the speed that people are going to be effective at reducing collisions? Because if they're too small, people don't slow down, and it's to gain, the person in the roundabout has the right of way, and a person entering the roundabout has to yield to the person inside. Do you believe you have enough room for that to be effective?
Yeah, and I guess I just want to clarify. So they roundabouts do reduce collisions. They reduce specifically this broadside type of collision, right? Because if you think of a signal and there's a lot of
if it's big enough. Yeah, if it's big enough, we'll
if
do
you're
that.
having
If it's
like
little,
a mini traffic circle in like the center of a neighborhood street that people don't really have to go around. But yes, the design of, and I can also turn it over to Marius to talk more about, it's been shifted to include enough deflection that you have to slow down. So those details would be further worked out, but that was one of the things that, was taken into account. And one of the reasons why the roundabouts, in this phase seem feasible at Cypress in California, but not at 16th Street, because there's not enough area to be able to shift to create enough deflection. But maybe I'll let Marius weigh in if you want to, Marius.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shonda. Even at this planning stage, we had, at a minimum, tried to address what would be not only the speed, but also the design vehicle, which would be a California legal truck, and also determining how much that inscribed circle design. So yes, the design shows the real size. There may be, as we go in the next phases, further design for the roundabouts, but what you see, it's fairly close, even at this planning level. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Next council member in the room, Kimberly.
I have so many thoughts about this, and I'm a little nervous because I'm not sure I'm totally ready to ask the questions. I think I tend to agree with Dan about a lot of the points that he raised. And I'm one of the people who've been, going to these meetings since probably like 2008. Is that possible? So, I feel like I've come full circle, because I slowly, in the beginning, I didn't want lights. I didn't want roundabouts. And then slowly I started to think, well, I like roundabouts better than lights. Now here we've gotten to this point where you presented two alternatives that present both roundabouts and lights, and I thought it was one or the other, and that concerns me. I feel like we've also gotten way far away from the real reason that we all wanted this project, was for better, safer pedestrian and bicycle transportation. So, safer ways to cross the road, including underpasses or overpasses or something of the sort. I have very grave concerns that this has been going on so long, that the momentum for this project and all the work that has been put into it means that we're going to get towards the end of it and have a choice to make. And there's going to be great pressure not to choose the no project option, because who wants to go to all this work and then choose no project? I mean, it essentially becomes not an option at that juncture, especially for the staff who have worked on this, because it's not in their best interest to even go in that direction. So that's a concern as well. You mentioned lowering the speed limit and that there's new state legislation. And I'd like to hear about that because I have continuously, as have many of my community, fellow community members, brought up lowering the speed limit from day one. I think that's the single most important thing we could do on this stretch of highway. And we've been told repeatedly it's not an option, which makes no sense to me because it's the easiest, most cost-effective option. So I'd like to hear from you what that new legislation is that may be coming down the pipe that could help with this. And I'd like to reiterate that I don't want to hear that it's not an option because there has to be a way to lower speed limits. Otherwise, we wouldn't have low speed limits in front of schools, for instance. So if you could answer that question, and then I have a couple of other things.
Sure. So speed limit setting is actually a very complicated topic. And I know it seems like we can just lower a speed limit sign anywhere, but that is just simply not how California law works. And so new legislation, and I think I might turn it over to Maurice or Ramsey to talk more about this, is can't remember the exact assembly bill that was passed, like specify specific criteria for where you can lower a speed limit by about 5 miles per hour in certain types of areas, including things like business districts. So it's similar in some ways to, I think, Assembly Bill 321 that allowed in front of like in school zones, for example, to not have to go through a standard process of speed limit setting, which requires speed limit data collection and seeing what the 85th percentile is, and then setting the speed limit off of that. So anyway, I can, what we're trying to do is understand whether that legislation would apply and allow us to pursue lowering the posted speed limit in the area. Now, I think that as probably many of you have experienced in your own lives driving, the posted speed limit sign is certainly what you should be driving at, but most people don't. What they really are reacting to is the environment. So if you're in an area that's wide open spaces and fields all around, you're likely to drive a lot faster than if you're in a dense urban environment with lots of things going on that you as a driver need to pay attention to. So I want to just sort of react to the comment around why this project and why do we have some of these things and the need for safe crossings is that we are trying to really implement through design to actually create the environment, the lower driving speeds that the community has asked for in order to make it safer to cross, because we cannot just go through and take out those signs and put up ones that say 25 miles per hour. That is not allowed. But what we can do is look at this new legislation to see if we can lower the posted speed limit, especially on the approach into Moss Beach. And then roundabouts in particular, because of their design, the approach speed has to be, the posted speed limit will actually, I believe, will end up staying the same. It's just that the warning signs in order to advance into the roundabout will say what the entry speed is, and people will go slower because there is infrastructure in place to encourage those lower speeds. So as transportation planners and engineers and designers, this is something that we've all experienced and know from many projects that without sufficient sort of cues to people driving, high speeds will persist. A posted speed limit sign will allow us to think about even more potential traffic calming devices and things like that if we're able to lower the posted speed limit, but it won't change necessarily behavior on its own. And I'll just pause there and see if anybody on the project team wants to weigh in on that.
Sure, I could help out. The Assembly Bill is AB 43. And there was a follow-up bill that provided revisions or clarifications. It's AB 1938. And, Highway 1 is a state facility. And Caltrans is going through the California Traffic Control Devices Committee to update what they call as the California MUTCD, which provides the guidelines for assessing and evaluating a speed adjustment. So this is something new, and Caltrans hasn't formally adopted the process. It does require a traffic and engineering study to be conducted, and my understanding, if the study meets a certain criteria, the speed limit, I think, can be either brought down or up by a 5 mile per hour increment. So it is a new provision that Caltrans is assessing, and again, they have some draft procedures that they're evaluating, and it could be an opportunity to take a look at and see if Caltrans feels that this is something that could be implemented on this stretch of Highway 1.
Thank you. That's really helpful. 2 questions. For that Caltrans process, evaluation process, is there an opportunity for the public to weigh in and comment? Do you know?
You mean from the specific process for reducing the speed on SR1 or the overall?
Overall,
I don't believe so. It is basically a committee that is formed by representatives from throughout the state, that from various agencies that participate in this committee. And I don't know personally if it's open to the public for comment, but they do meet on a regular basis, where the traffic engineers from the various cities, counties, and agencies, they meet and they discuss these new laws and try to take these laws and put them into policies and procedures.
And I'll just
Okay.
add that, Kimberly, I mean, you're certainly not the first person or the only person in the state of California who has brought up for many years how the way that we set speed limits is not conducive to the community. And so Assemblymember Friedman has brought forward, I think, most of the legislation in the state regarding trying to change the process. So if you're interested in sort of learning more about different bills that have been brought forward, looking at what she's brought forward would be a good way to kind of see the evolution as it's happening right now.
Okay, yeah, that's really helpful, because what I have noticed is over the years that there seems to be no problem with raising the speed limit. It's just a problem with going the other direction. And that makes no sense to me, because we're encouraging faster traffic. And I take your point that, we all probably tend to drive faster in certain situations, regardless of the speed limit. But the lower speed limit does provide some sort of deterrent, even if it lowers it a little or in certain situations. And I've seen the speed limit continue to go up. Just the stretch past Moss Beach went up to 55 and people routinely drive 70. That's not a good situation. And I guess the other thing I just want to go back to is this idea that this is a rural scenic highway. And I know that the county necessarily doesn't have a hand in this, that this is Caltrans, but Caltrans seems to be slowly eating away at Highway 1, and there are fewer and fewer scenic, historic stretches of this highway in California. And this still is one piece of Highway 1 that continues as it has for a very long time. And we're not going to have that anymore at some point. I go through Mendocino and it's like a highway built for a large city in a small place. And I'm really worried that that's going to happen here. And you completely disconnect your community and lose that feel. And this project, to me, feels like it is sort of another bite out of the highway, taking us in a direction that I'm not sure we all want to go, even though we do want certain things, and definitely there must be some compromises we may have to make. So I guess, let me just look at my list again. I'll stop there, and then maybe I can circle back at the end if I feel the need to. Thank you.
All right, last person in the room, Claire.
Very, very briefly, I'll echo my appreciation for all the efforts you're making to get input from people. I hope it pays off. And I have an appreciation for the fact that apparently in order to lower our speed limits, we have to have roundabouts, whether we need roundabouts or signals or not. And it just seems so ironic, and it's hard for me to even say anything about that. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Ann Rothman, council member, attending remotely.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So for me, I wanted to know, first of all, I had a question. Is this an all or nothing kind of deal? Is it possible to change what the alternatives will be throughout this process, or is this it? Is it like basically all of these signals or nothing? And then I'll continue with my questions.
I guess in some ways, I don't know how to answer that. I've started to the project team. I think that, right, like as we continue to study in the next phases, what the impacts of each of the alternatives would be, we'll learn more about what each of their feasibility would be. And so the project alternatives can continue to evolve. So I don't think it's an all or nothing, sort of in the way you're framing it. I don't think it's all or nothing in the way that you've described it. But maybe I would turn it over to Catherine or Ramsey to kind of better frame the next steps.
So, the alternatives are that are proposed are going to go into the next phase, and it could come out that option or the analysis shows that maybe one roundabout would function sufficiently. So, there is the opportunity to take one component of the roundabout, for example, and I'm not necessarily advocating for it, and implement one of the features there if the traffic analysis shows so and it merits that. So I don't think it's all, because also we heard some pretty clear concerns about the signal at 16th Street, for example, and if that does become problematic from a safety and an operational perspective, that doesn't necessarily become the identified preferred alternative. So I've seen some projects where the Caltrans process where they took components of one of the alternatives and with the further analysis deemed that there should be some adjustments to it. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Actually, it was very good. Thank you. Actually, yes, because my biggest concern is 16th Street. I don't think it's necessary at all, and I actually consider it much more of a hazard than a help. I am most concerned about the fact that you're coming around a blind curve and you will have to come to a stop. And if anyone is backed up to Carlos Street, it could be too late by the time someone sees that they need to stop. And God forbid somebody's in the crosswalk, they could be easily killed when someone hits someone from behind and now they're thrust out into the crosswalk. I mean, I think it's an extremely dangerous place to put a light. The whole reason you're saying you need to put the light in the first place is because of the sight distance at Carlos. Well, if cars are stopped at Carlos on Highway 1, it could be nearly impossible to stop in time. Furthermore, you're going to have flashing lights all through town leading up to that traffic light, which will be going all hours of the night. And I can't see how this doesn't disturb the people And flashing lights would certainly be disruptive to the environment and wildlife. I mean, and just outright bothersome to people. I can't imagine that flashing every night and going into people's homes. I just think that that's crazy. And also, I know you say you need to have a crosswalk to get to the bus stop, but I don't understand why you simply wouldn't why not have the crosswalk at California, cross to the would that be the west side of the highway, and have a walkway or do a pathway down to the bus stop from there. That would also connect the people who are currently on the east side of the highway. They then would have access to the walk down to the bus stop if they wanted to. Because right now, the way this would be, this would only help the people who are on the east side of the highway get to the west side. But it doesn't do anything for the people who are currently on the west side, living on the west side of the highway. So anybody down near Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, anything like anything in that area, if you were to have a crosswalk at California and walkways going down, let's see if I get this right, the west side of the highway towards the bus stop, then you can actually have everyone be able to utilize that rather than just one small group of people, should there be some. So that's my take on that area. If you're, and again, I think Dan's ideas are certainly worth exploring because I think they could be a safer way for people to cross. And then let's see. Also, one of my concerns was that the complete multimodal trail is not proposed in this either. We're talking just a small section of the multimodal trail, which is supposed to be for the people. And so just like Kimberly said, this seems very car-centric as opposed to people-centric. And I thought the entire reason for Connect the Coast Side was to improve safety for the pedestrians as well as bicyclists. And I just don't see how that is going to be accomplished with this. It seems to me that this is really about, focusing on one development and how to get people in and out of that, as opposed to what is best for the entire community. And I think what's best for the community, if you were going to do anything, is a signal at Cypress, signal or roundabout, whichever you're deciding, at California, and then that's it. And then focus up on Montara and see what their needs are, because they're not being addressed at all. And I just don't see how 16th Street benefits anybody, but to me, it just presents a far greater hazard than it does a help. So I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, Anne, thank you. We'll now take questions and comments from the public. Burnett Silveria, you've been waiting a long time.
Yeah, actually, Sid was before me.
I know, but she has already spoken, so I was trying to give you some
that's quite all right. I just wanted to say, as far as waiting for this particular subject, I just had a quick comment. I just wanted to put my support behind roundabouts. I've been exposed to roundabouts in Truckee, California on busy thoroughfares, and they work well. I was wondering if pollution, particularly carbon from stopped cars idling and starting from stoplights, has been considered in the options. Thank you.
I just wanted to react and say that, I think, and I guess I would turn over to Catherine, but, air quality is one of the things that would be addressed in the environmental phase. So there hasn't been any specific analysis in this phase around vehicles stopping and sort of the issue around braking and particulates and things like that.
Okay. Sid Young.
Thank you, Chandra, for coming in, bringing your team with you. I have a quick question for Ramsey. I think I sent you the photos after I talked to you at the open house of the flooding in downtown, so-called downtown Moss Beach. Did you get them?
I don't believe so. Let me.
Oh, don't worry about it. I just want to know because
what is your email address again, sir? Just
I'm not going to say it on the internet. I'll email you tomorrow with the photos.
Please do. I know we
talked. Please copy the council.
Oh, you want me to copy the council? All right.
Yeah, I want to make sure we have the best photos because, you know, it also relates to our stormwater research.
True. Okay, so starting with Chandra, maybe I'm going to go through all my questions and then at the end you can answer. Are at any point, I've lived in Moss Beach for 35 years and I go through the Cypress intersection to leave the highway. I mean, enter or leave the highway. And that is LOSF. And it can't get any worse until they finally finish Bigway project. But we're going to need some kind of, you know, traffic control there better than waiting and waiting and waiting. So I wanted to know, since we did lose a friend of ours last year on Highway 1 on his bicycle, do you have any data for the collision and accident or death data for the past 30 years? Because there have been several along that corridor. Are you planning to get that from CHP?
Yeah, there's a there's a analysis of crashes, included in the PID. It's not a 30-year period because that's not what it requires. But there is a crash analysis that talks about severe injury and death and the different types of crashes that have occurred.
And at the end of your presentation, I think you kept mentioning the website, but the last page you flicked it off so we would go back to this screen for Zoom, and I didn't see it. So will that be on the can you give that to the MCC or put that slide up near the end so we can all copy down the address for the website that you mentioned a few times?
By remarkable coincidence, I just asked her to post the website in the chat while you were talking.
Yes, it's in. Hopefully. So yeah, it's via the planning and building website, and it's Moss Beach SR1. And I believe the PowerPoint is posted on the MCC website, which has the link in it and a QR code.
Right. As long as
the same website, so it takes you to the same website. So it's hopefully everywhere.
It is.
I'm going to finish my questions because if you answer them each one by one, then Greg's going to cut the buzzer off. So you mentioned removing the Virginia crosswalk, and that currently is the only one that has a flashing light to alert people about pedestrians. And on Thursday, it was malfunctioning and it flashed even when there were no pedestrians. So my question is, will the other 7 ones that you plan to put in all have flashing lights for pedestrian notification? Because my feeling is, first of all, the reason I'm asking that is the Virginia crosswalk was put there back when Supervisor Horsley was in office, and he had to, Caltrans begged him to get the county to install traffic light. Illumination at night at that crosswalk. So that's the one you're taking away, but that's the only one, that's the only street light in all of Moss Beach at the moment for nighttime safety. So are you if you're going to put in 7 crosswalks, are you going to put in 7 more light poles? That's what I wanted to know. I'm not in favor of that, by the way, but I'm just asking. And the main purpose for it having been at Virginia is people cross there to go to the burrito shop. There's not too many businesses on the west side of the highway. It's just a Chevron station and a burrito shop. The burrito shop gets a lot of walk-ins and the gas station gets drive-ins. So I think it would be more important to have at least preserve 1 crosswalk with a flashing signal and overhead illuminated lighting. I'm not in favor of raised medians. And I wondered if you had asked the fire department about that, because you may not know this, but when the fire department is in a hurry, they go down the center lane and everybody's supposed to pull over to the shoulders. So I'm definitely against raised medians because that might deter someone getting out on the fire trucks, getting out on the highway and therefore getting to their important destination. I don't know if you even thought about that. And so I'm hoping you won't put in 7 crosswalks. That just seems crazy to me. That would definitely slow traffic down for those that are worried about it. As far as the turning conflicts at 16th Street, I mean, there is a bad one now that exists, and that's because people that are going into, let's say you're going northbound and you want to turn left to the west side of the highway where the Montero Water and Sanitary District or the Lighthouse is, which is a youth hostel now. you can do so, but there's an oncoming lane going to the to Carlos Street, which is the same turning thing. So that's the turning conflict I'd be worried about, because I almost got creamed there. Some lady that changed her mind at the last minute. She was going to turn on Carlos, but then she suddenly tried to go into the lighthouse instead. So this doesn't mention, nobody has mentioned at all Cypress Point. So my question now is on funding. Will this go through and the funding be considering whether or not the new development has to be stalled until 2030? Because I certainly don't want to see us waiting for Cypress Point when they may not build it. But on the other hand, I'd hate to see them build it without any of the road improvements. So that's one question I hope you'll be able to answer tonight. And then the last one I was just going to address is that a lot of people that I talked to were very unhappy with not answering a lot of the questions at the open house, because as one person put it, when you divide people up into little small groups, that's like manufacturing consent. And I really think I experienced it when you were doing Connect the Coast Side and you put everybody into Zoom rooms. And and then you didn't publish the notes that everybody was giving their input during the Zoom room meetings. So I think if you have more public meetings in the future, you should just sit there, grin and bear it, and listen to all the public comment and maybe answer, because that's how everybody learns about different issues. Thank you.
All right, well, maybe I'll start going backwards. So just about the Q&A and sort of listening to comments, I just wanted to share that all of the feedback during Connect the Coastside from all the breakout rooms was actually published as part of the plan in an appendix. So if you're interested in what everybody said, you can look at that. We've actually received feedback from both directions that some stakeholders really appreciate that we're able to have one-on-one conversations and not have to sit through a very long meeting and just share their comments directly. Others, like yourself, have shared the opposite, that you'd prefer to, hear everybody's comments. So, just in terms of the comments that we've received, like I mentioned earlier in the meeting, I'm compiling every single comment that I've received. They will be attached to the PSR PDS as received, but categorized. So if it's a comment about speeding, it'll be in the speeding section. If it's a comment about 16th Street, it'll be kind of categorized into 16th Street. So you will be able to see all of the feedback that we, the project team, have also gotten, since there are obviously many of us that have spoken to lots of different people. Around the funding, so this project is on a completely separate track than Cypress Point. We're pursuing funding independently of this project. Is not dependent on what happens with Cypress Point. It is going to require a lot more resources that the county and its partners will need to pursue in order to realize the future phases. So as I mentioned, we are seeking funding for the next phase of the project, which is PAED, but we still have all of the rest to go for. So we are, in terms of what happens with Cypress Point and the specific conditions or what the project would be required to do, they may be required to proportionally contribute to certain improvements that are related to this. It's going to be dependent on that project's approval process and timeline. And so it's not tied to that project happening or not happening. We're going to be seeking resources for this project independently of that. You mentioned on the 16th Street sort of two-way conflict. Yes, we're very aware of the conflicting two-way center turn lane and needing to address that. That's one of the reasons that the intervention is recommended, because right now there is a center turn lane that has conflicting movements to be able to go into Carlos or to the lighthouse driveway. So we are aware of that. On the fire department and the raised median, so fire departments often have concerns about raised medians. They're often designed so that fire trucks can just drive right over them. So if there's no plant like no trees or anything in the median. The width is usually, and the height is usually designed so that a fire truck could just drive over it. So that is something that can be addressed and is often addressed by communities in sort of detailed design for projects. So that is, but I don't believe we spoke in detail with the fire department during this phase. That would happen in the future. In terms of the crosswalks and the RRFB, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So some of the crossings that you were mentioning, like the ones at California, Cypress, and 16th right now are what we're calling controlled crosswalks, right? So they're at intersection controls. And so I know on our slide, we highlighted, it's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locations. The 7 crosswalks are because it's on either side of a street. So if you're looking at Cypress, you have a crossing on the north side of the street and the south side of the street, right? To be able to cross, not have to cross, make 3 crossings if you're trying to cross. So, lighting is definitely a concern that we've heard a lot about, and not wanting to, as I mentioned in the presentation, add a bunch of additional lighting if it's not needed. But, of course, we need to think about roadway safety as the project is continued to be designed. So we would have to have adequate crosswalk lighting. I don't think, no decisions have been made around what this specific additional, if there would be like rectangular rapid flashing beacons, for example, at the crossing of Vermont, which would be an uncontrolled location. So those details have not been, are not included in the project alternatives right now. But again, that would be kind of an assessment as we continue moving down the path here. On the level of service and Cypress, yes, we're again very aware that the level of service, especially is low because of the side street delay. So as we talked about in our September 19th presentation, that some of the data shows that people might have to wait up to 7 minutes to turn to get onto Highway 1. And so that is where, the intersection controls that are being recommended in the alternatives would improve that delay. The collision data that is included in the project initiation document, when we're done with the project initiation document and it's approved, then we will be able to release that document publicly, which would include the preliminary collision analysis. For the next phase, we would be doing additional collision analysis.
Thank you, Chandra. You did mention one acronym.
No R, just for the future. Go on.
Did you mentioned a acronym? I thought it was QED or LED something.
I'm sorry, RRFB, and that's what is at that location. It's called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon.
So if you remove that Virginia crosswalk, that won't be until after you've gone through the funding phase. And
correct. We're just saying it would be removed as part of the implementation of this project. So right now, our project alternatives do not include a crossing at Virginia because we're moving. There will be a crossing at California and a crossing at Vermont.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Fran Pollard.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say I support whatever everybody in Moss Beach wants to do over there. But I have a quick 2 questions for Chanda. How do you say your name? Chanda?
Chanda is fine with me. Yeah,
okay.
It's actually Chanda, but that's just harder to say. So I'll go with Chanda. But no R. The R is what gets me.
Right. All right. So anyway, on a different subject, I'm in El Granada, and I've been worried about, this is on a future agenda item, the shoreline at Harbor. There's a big sinkhole that's a couple of feet from the highway. And I'm wondering are you in constant touch with the highway department, with Caltrans, somebody there? And can you just ask them if they have any intention of fixing that before the storms hit again, or who to contact that might be in charge of that?
So I'm not in contact with that particular group that would address that concern. I did I can reach back out to my contact at Caltrans to see if they were addressed. I don't know if Mike is still in the room
Well,
or
I think also we ought to reflect in the minutes that we'd ask Mike O'Neill to look into this sinkhole issue that you're bringing up, Fran, because it's not Shonda's responsibility.
No, I was just wondering if she has a contact person that she can ask who is in charge, and do they intend to do something before the whole highway caves in?
Shonda, if
And then
you
we're
could
all in
send us-
trouble.
Send us that contact information at the MCC.
Great, I'll send it.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Anything
you.
else, Fran?
That's it
that
for
it?
that.
Okay. Thanks, Sid. All right. So now I see no other public comment. I'm closing public comment.
Dan has his hand.
Right, but we're going to have council discussion. So now, Dan, did you want to bring something up?
Yeah, I just had one more very quick question, and that is in regards to if a roundabout was chosen, my question is how many signs will be posted around it? I'm guessing probably 14 or 15 signs just in related to the roundabout, as far as, you know, merging, one way, lower speed, roundabout ahead, crossing ahead, flashing lights, and all this stuff. There were 14 signs. I know that in County San Mateo, signs are when they put up signs, they put up a lot of them for two speed bumps in Clipper Ridge. There's 14 signs notifying of these, just the, you know, speed bump ahead, here's a speed bump, you know, slow. It just goes on and on. I mean, every possible box of a sign was checked. And I think that was, well, the result of that is it just adds to the urbanism, and it takes away from the natural feel. And of course, you know, wanted to stop there, and you can maybe answer, maybe one of the on the team can answer, how many signs would be put up, you know, associated with a roundabout alternative, specifically for the roundabout and the crossings and all that.
Yeah, I don't know if Marius knows offhand. We do have some call outs in the project alternatives in the exhibits. And so I'm just looking at those now to see if we can just count, but it looks like there are 1, 2, maybe 2 on each approach. But Marius, do you know offhand?
Yes. So just you know, I won't go into numbers, but we're talking in the neighborhood of tens. You know, because you're also
That's in one
having,
direction.
no, not tens in one direction, but you know, roundabout, northbound, southbound. Also, you have to add the signs for.
Marius, Marius, I don't think we have the exact number to share, but you're right. There are going to be advanced signs, and I don't know if it could be like the number of 14, like you're saying, but this is something we could look into and get back to Chanda and provide her this information. But we don't have the exact number, because at this level, it's a conceptual level, preliminary.
Correct.
But we could take a look at that. Yeah, it's about a good question, and we could look into that.
Thank you.
Okay, so council discussion. First, again, I want to repeat my thanks to you all, Chanda, for bringing your staff here and for putting in the time and for the quality of feedback we've gotten. I think we owe you a similar effort on our part, and I apologize that we have been busy with many other issues this year. So we have yet to weigh in on this. So I want to open it to the council. What do we want to do about this? We don't have a letter planned or scheduled. We don't have a work group. We do have a work group. Okay, so Kimberly, you might speak because you might be on that work group.
I might be on the work group. That would be me, Dan, and Ann.
Okay.
And then Lynn is sort of a community member also. I had one other question for Chanda, if I might. Is she still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
In regard to lighting, we didn't talk about hawk signals, and those came up a while back instead of traffic lights. And I know that they use those in, I don't know if they use them in San Mateo or San Bruno.
Yeah, they're pretty common, like the pedestrian hybrid beacon or a hawk are used pretty commonly when it's just when the only need at a location is to provide a, you know, a safer, uncontrolled crossing, like a marked crossing. So I think the distinction here is that we, in addition to improving pedestrian safety, one of the goals of this project is to improve the vehicular operations at the location. So at Cypress and California and 16th. And so a hawk would not serve that purpose at those locations, but at the other locations like Vermont, you know, or Etheldor, it might be that something like that would be warranted if speeds are really high and volumes are high.
Okay, and then I just want to bring up one other thing. This council and maybe other entities in San Mateo have talked about a dark skies lighting initiative, a possible ordinance for the county. And I know we had an expert come and talk to us a while back, Dr. Travis Longcore, and he gave us examples of safe roads that have effective night lighting that illuminates only the roadway with no spillover. So there are examples that can be done, and I'd like for this project to take that into consideration, that if an ordinance does come to pass, this stretch of road, this project would need to comply with it. And I would hope that there are no exemptions.
So I would just comment, I followed up with Dr. Longcore in the last month. And he finally sent us what was the code, Dan, for Salt Lake City, the traffic code? He sent us a document, which he said represented an emerging best practice. And so I would like to submit that to you and the rest of the MCC for consideration in terms of what we would ask the county to consider. So there's a dark skies thing we haven't yet done anything about. And there's this, and there's an overlap.
Okay, I just wanted to
I think it would be super helpful if there are examples. It's not like, you know, we're not the only community in California that has goals around dark, or either has a dark skies ordinance or has goals around reduced lighting. And so if there are any examples of other, you know, locations in California that have that specific lighting that you're looking for, certainly helpful to have. I think that is something that we're well aware of and we want to really discuss with Caltrans, because we've heard over and over again the desire to really minimize the amount of lighting, and addressing specifically, you know, making sure skies stay dark as much as we can, and not lighting homes that are adjacent to the highway. But yeah, if there's any California specific examples that Dr. Longcore shared, that would be great.
Okay, and then before we go to discussion, I have one other point that Anne raised actually, which was, I think it was Anne, or maybe it was you, Greg, permeability, and maybe ways to capture road runoff so that it doesn't impact species of concern. And I didn't see that in any of the plans, sort of ways to capture road runoff, and also ways to encourage more permeability as opposed to more impermeable surfaces.
Yeah, it's just not at this stage of the project. But I mean, like I mentioned before, part of this stage is looking at, you know, producing a stormwater data report that looks at kind of the level of impervious surfaces that would be created. But I think we're very much aware of wanting to use any opportunities to implement capture solutions to address the known, you know, flooding issues and ponding issues, and reduce impervious surfaces. That would be consistent with our own climate action plan as well. So it's just not going to be at this phase of the project.
Okay.
Claire.
Chanda, this is Catherine. I can provide an additional comment on that if you'd like.
Please do.
I waited so long to add something I hope will be useful. And Kimberly, thanks for the question. So one of the things that we'll be looking at for this project, and we'll be seeing that more in the next phase as we progress in the level of of design. And when you guys have an opportunity to comment, through the CEQA process on the environmental document, and that is still down the road quite a bit, but we're going to be looking at what are the different permitting requirements. And so we know already that this project is going to require, coastal permitting through the county. It's going to require, with the endangered species and the wetlands in the project area, we're going to be looking at coordinating with the State Water Board. We're going to be coordinating with California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Army Corps of Engineers. And so what I've seen is that anytime we are adding any additional impervious surface to the roadway, then the water board is going to require us to offset that by using additional like biofiltration. And Marius will work with his team to incorporate that whenever possible within the project area. And if there are, specific species, as we know there are in this area, then the CDFW is going to be looking really closely before they give us a permit, which we cannot construct the project without all of those agencies. They have jurisdiction over some portion of the project as well. And so even after, if the community and Caltrans all come together to agree on an alternative, then in the following phase, during detailed design, we would be required to go to those agencies and say, this is what we plan to do, and they will have additional requirements. We always try to be looking forward and anticipate what those requirements are so that we can plan it in and keep the project as inexpensive as possible and not have any rework. But so things like dark skies to protect endangered species and biofiltration areas and additional mitigations, setting aside new areas and things like that are all going to become part of the project. That isn't the phase, that isn't a job of the phase that we were just in. So far, all we've done is say, yes, we are going to need a permit from this agency. But during the next phase, we're going to dig into anticipating some of their desires and getting those components into the project, and then further asking their permission. And they will, give us their requirements before they agree to those permits. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you all. Thanks, Chanda. This is really helpful.
We have more. Claire?
Just a quick request, if you can use your influence regarding signs. The Midcoast multimodal trail, which is now complete, thank you. There is still a sign up at the corner of, I guess it's Coronado and Highway 1 on the west side of Highway 1, saying that it's still being built.
West side?
Yeah, it's as you go south on
It's
Highway.
west side. Okay.
This is a road construction sign you're
It's
talking
a road construction sign. There is no road being
or
constructed.
a trail construction sign.
Yeah, trail construction sign. If there's anything you can do to get that removed, that would be great.
Sorry, can you repeat the location?
It's at the corner of, it's on Highway 1 southbound at the just before the intersection of Coronado.
And is it a county public works sign or is it a Caltrans sign?
It's a county sign.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Which raises another interesting point. Chanda, when we did connect the coast side, there was a map, the executive summary map 4. It showed a pedestrian and bike improvement from Ethel Door to 16th on Carlos, mostly separated multimodal trail. How come that's not on these drawings?
It's not part of this project because Carlos is not a.
Okay, so that's your point before.
That's what it, yeah. So that would have to be a separate project that the county would lead on its own road. But we've included the sections, which is why some sections are included in this, because they're in the Caltrans right of way. They would require a Caltrans encroachment permit, right? We need Caltrans's coordination to actually implement the multimodal trail for where it's listed in this project, in these project alternatives.
Okay, and just to maybe put a bow on this, you've heard people asking for underpasses. That's not in this suite of alternatives. What would be required to get a feasibility study for an underpass in Lost Beach included in this project?
I think I might turn that over to Marius, who has looked at Marius, if you're still there and able to talk about this. It's there's also specific, just like we're going through this process for even the alternatives, right, with Caltrans that we presented to you. Caltrans also has a very, very specific guidance and process on when they would even consider an underpass or an overpass. So Marius, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to say about that, those Caltrans requirements.
No, Shanda, you pretty much said it. Again, there are specific studies that need to be included in helping determining if an underpass, overpass is needed. Again, some of these steps are highlighted in the highway design manual for any pedestrian grade separation that has to happen. Study should generally cover sources that are generating the pedestrian sources, pedestrian crossing volumes, and location of adjacent crossing facilities, zoning, land use, and even age. All these factors are basically studied and will help determine if there's a need or not.
I think the upshot is that even looking at we're talking about like comparing this highway to Highway 101 or 280, right? And the level and the cost of, so like we don't have the pedestrian volumes that would meet or the land use or like many of the other things that Caltrans would require to really consider further evaluating an underpass or an overpass in this area. And it's an expensive endeavor that doesn't actually meet all of our project identified needs, because we are not just trying to solve, it's like we're looking into a pedestrian grade separated crossing of the Caltrain corridor, for example, in North Fair Oaks. That is something that's an ongoing project, because right, there is no other option, right? People cannot walk across a 4-track railroad. That's just not allowed by the CPUC. So there are some locations where it absolutely necessitates a grade separation, but in this case, we're trying to accomplish more than just getting pedestrians across the highway and delegating them above ground or below ground when the volumes don't necessitate them, and the cost alone for just one crossing would probably be well over what it just doesn't go with the Caltrans guidance.
Get you and your staff coming. Now, the question is, so what? And so I turn to the council for discussion on what we do about this.
I think we're like a half hour over. I think we've got a lot of information right now. I think that maybe this is something that we should bring back.
Okay, so you want to defer discussion, Scott's?
Discussion. I don't know if we need any more discussion. I can't think of what an item we should act on, but if we do, we should go to Dan's office and bring it up again. If we can think of something that we need to do specifically, let's bring it up on a future session.
Claire?
Yeah, I'm good with stopping.
All right, I'm not quite good with stopping, but I would say this. I will write down my concerns and send them to the entire MCC and to the planning people. And I would ask that the subcommittee consider drafting a letter on this topic. And we can discuss that letter, to your point, Dan, at another meeting.
I don't think you can write down your concerns and send them to us.
Why not?
You're pretty, Doug.
But I just brought them up in a public meeting.
Yeah, but the concerns you already said.
There are concerns I already expressed.
I've not new ones.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm going to propose that we do get a letter out of the subcommittee. And if it's necessary, I'm willing to change assignments on the subcommittee and add some horsepower to helping write that letter. But I think we need a letter.
But does Shonda think we need a letter?
I don't care.
Well, I just want to make sure that I think, right, like this isn't a legally required public comment period. There's nothing that's sort of like, we're taking in comments to inform our next phase. So you are welcome to draft a letter, submit individual comments. They will go as part of the project initiation document to inform our next phase. But this isn't a phase where we are going to produce a response to comments like we will do in the next phase of project approval and the environmental phase. So it's really up to individuals on the council and up to the council itself about how you'd like to share your feedback with us.
Okay.
And do you feel like it needs to be a consensus, I guess, across the council?
My point is, this is bigger than this one project. She already mentioned they're not dealing with Carlos Street. We've already talked about Cypress Point. We've talked about dark skies. This is a broader issue, although it's a key component of it. And I think we need to register our concerns in writing to the county as a whole. That's my suggestion.
So that would be that was going to be my question. What's the nature of the letter? Because for Shonda's purposes, we've already given them a letter of support for the phase
we
two.
support.
Oh, that was just the grant.
Yeah, we support
Just the grant.
we support the grant,
Okay.
and we're eager to see what they do. But I would just like to register the concerns that exist.
So it would just be a restatement of some of the things that we brought up tonight, and
well-written restatement of the concerns. But I also think it needs to go, if I could, elsewhere in the county, because some of the things we're bringing up about stormwater are not being handled. As we know, this county has no stormwater management plan. Okay, so there's, and the dark sky issue is another one. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
so in that case, then I would suggest that we do schedule this topic for, just to discuss that. What do you want in a letter, who it goes to, and what the goal is.
So that would be a meeting in November.
I agree. And, we are entering the holiday season and there's really no real deadline on this. They're probably not going to bring it up for another year or more, right?
Chonda, when is the next point that you would come to us?
Right now we don't have a next point plan because we don't know when we're going to get, if and when we'll get funding for that next phase. So, I think any comments that we would want to be part of the project initiation document, it would be helpful to receive those by, I guess Maria's not on the call, probably within the next couple of weeks so that we can try and include those as part of the actual appendix. If you submit something to me and it doesn't end up part of the appendix, it'll still be part of, our record of the comments that would be considered.
Okay, thank you.
All right, for the minutes, please note Gus Motomal has arrived.
I got it.
Okay.
Welcome.
So thanks, everybody. That concludes this agenda topic.
Thank you, everyone.
And we bring up now the issue of the letter on the Quarry Park off-leash dog walking. Last meeting, we had several people, combination of not attending in person or like myself abstaining on the vote, and we ended up having a majority of the quorum present vote in favor of a letter. However, we subsequently got an opinion of council, and it was actually quite involved letter that he wrote. It turns out that letter could not be sent because we do need 4 affirmative votes out of the 7 members to approve the letter. So for discussion tonight, I have put on the website 2 letters. And sorry, I apologize. I don't want to mess anything up here while I try and bring these up. One of the letters is 1 sentence, which is what we had voted on at the last meeting. And let me see if I can share that letter.
One alternative would be just to not send a letter. The sentiment of the council has already been, noted. Just don't send a letter and we can move on and go home early tonight. Because, I don't know.
I hear you, Dan.
I think that there's a certain stickiness in like revisiting this. It was already visited. We already,
all right,
decided.
We didn't have official approval and there were people who didn't attend and vote, etc. So can everybody see this letter? It's 1 sentence. The MCC supports the permanent adoption of off-leash walking provisions at Quarry Park in El Granada. That was the letter we voted on. Okay, and the other letter, which reflects a little bit of the community sentiment, and for some reason is not coming up quickly. Give me a second here. Adds the following wording.
Where did this come from? Sorry.
I drafted this. Claire has some other thoughts.
Okay, so you rewrote the letter.
I extended the letter to include community feedback, and it says the MCC supports the permanent adoption of off-leash dog walking provisions at Quarry Park in Alberta, but requests additional signage to clarify off-leash restrictions in the small field (parenthesis tot lot) close quotes, bordered with a split rail fence and adjacent to the fenced playground. Add signage clarifying that any dogs must be on leash in that area. Okay, now there's ellipsis here. I am not saying something else. There's also a meadow adjacent to the pump track where people also walk their dogs off leash. And the community members and I are not asking for any signage over there because that's a place where people can throw the ball and have their dog chase it. But we are asking for some, call it safety restrictions on this adjacent area in the split rail fence where the controversy has occurred. Okay, so now the question is, the council, before you get to you, Kimberly, Dan is suggesting we not even discuss this. Council's registered its opinion. What we would need is a motion and a second on one of these letters, or else, as Dan says, we close the agenda and go home early. Right? So do we have someone who wants to make a motion for one of these letters and a second?
I move we adopt the enhanced letter.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second from Claire. Okay, so now we will have a discussion and then public comment, and then we'll vote on a letter or amendments to a letter. All right, so who wants to begin with a discussion on why we should do this or not do it? Claire.
I just feel that we got enough requests from the community that this particular section of the park was felt to be a problem for kids and for families, and that if we're going to represent the whole community, we should represent the whole community and point out that we generally are very much in favor of the program of off-leash dog walking, but we want to make sure that this particular section is clarified.
Okay, Kimberly, I think you had your hand raised.
I just had a question because for me, I'm still confused about the field. In the pilot, the rules or the guidelines are that the field is for on leash or off leash.
Right now, my understanding is, and Burnett has looked at the ordinance, the only off-leash authorized spots were on approved trails. So technically, the fields or the meadow are not.
It's on leash only.
That's be on leash only. What I'm trying to say subtly in this letter is, since the community seems willing to allow off leash on the meadow near the pump track.
That's not what I heard at the last meeting.
Well, okay, you'll hear from some other people. Okay, so the question is, do we want to endorse specifically adding signage on the area of greatest concern, or what?
So my opinion is that, you know, in deference to the council supporting this, that we support what the current guidelines are from county parks. I think Nicholas was clear that there are rules attached to the pilot and you're extending those to be permanent. And so we're not asked at this stage, I don't think we should be asking for changes, just clarification and enforcement of what exists. And what you're suggesting is a request to change something.
I'm requesting to add signage on one area which is within the guidelines. In other words, right now, that tot lot, dogs would be permitted on leash. And I'm requesting signage to state that they are going to enforce on leash in that area. I'm
I
not
guess
changing a rule.
I would like enforcement in all areas for whatever the
Okay.
guideline is for
So you
each
would-
area.
you would
And
run.
that includes the field. If it is on leash in the field, then it should say on leash and it should be enforced.
Okay, any other council comment?
Scott? I just want to say something, and I'll make it as brief as possible. I support what Claire says. The community wants this and exactly how you said it, but I'm disappointed that I did not bring up other places in the San Mateo County Park system where you have to have a dog on a leash, but it is flagrantly violated on a daily basis. And specifically, I want to mention from Surfers Beach to Meadow Creek Bridge. That's San Mateo County Park land.
It's true.
I had never been there when there was less than 5 dogs off leash. So I'm all for supporting an area where it can be off leash, but I would really want to negotiate the fact that they need to be on leash there and it needs to be enforced.
Are you
But,
trying to enforce it at Surfers Beach or?
Yeah, well, from Surfers Beach to Meadow Creek is where that's San Mateo County Park. You're supposed to have your dog on a leash there. The signs say, please keep your dog on a leash. It is, I would appreciate dogs to be on leash. in
Okay,
that area.
I would view this as an additional agenda
I know,
topic.
I
for
just
this
had to
day.
blurt it out and I agree with you and you can ignore me. And
No, I'm not ignoring you. I just want to say, if you want to strengthen our support
Yes,
for on leash control in other areas, that's another letter. And
I understand. I understand. I just want to, like I said, I'm disappointed they missed an opportunity to negotiate that.
Okay, so
It's not negotiable. It is what its policy is.
I think we should open it up for public comment
Yes.
if we've
No, I
heard
agree
from the
with
board.
I agree with you.
I'll say that, I was kind of suggesting that we don't send it just to kind of speed things up. I thought that there was a more dramatic change. The addition of just the one sign, you should be a little more clear. What are you calling the tot lot? Tot lot is the playground and the field next to the tot.
It's the split rail fence area next
I
to.
wouldn't call,
next
why are
to-
you calling that a tot lot?
Because that's what the community refers to it there.
I think it's an
Well,
inept name too.
Whoever reads the letter, it should be clear, not to the person that.
Well,
You know,
I am
I would
open to
just say the
somebody
field-
proposing.
The
a
field
few words.
adjacent, the small field adjacent
It's
to,
called the children's playground, right?
No, the playground is the fenced area.
It's
Yeah.
the
field next to the playground,
the
small.
grassy area east of the playground.
Right, and wrapped around with a split rail fence, yeah.
So I'd be happy for somebody to type into chat, rewording, and we can vote on an amendment to the letter.
Anyway,
But
so.
in the meantime, we ought to entertain public comment, of which we have some. I see Chris Johnson has showed up in person, so there must be something on your mind, Chris.
Oh, I wasn't finished.
Oh, you weren't? I'm sorry.
No, you interrupted me and then I wasn't able to finish. So, on that, after reading this, generally, I'm not, really in favor of more control, but this is kind of a specific small area and, I would, yeah, I would vote, to move forward with that letter, yes.
I want to
Okay,
get this out the door. Let's vote on it.
well, but we have to entertain public comment, of which we have one in person and several people on Zoom. So, Chris?
Thanks, Greg. So first, I have several questions about the whole process here. I guess I'm not clear. It was decided at the meeting that there was a quorum, but now county council is saying that there must be 4 out of 7 of council members, regardless of the quorum established for the meeting. When did this happen? How has this decision come to? I feel like we've had meetings before over the years where a vote has been taken with less than 7 people there.
Good for you, but maybe it wasn't a letter, but I asked Tim Fox specifically, and he issued a ruling, cutting and pasting things from regulations into his email. And he said you need 4 votes. And interestingly enough, one of the reasons is because we're only an advisory board.
So
If we were a town council, apparently we would not.
so
No, wait. Tim Fox's response was that because there are 7 members of the council, a majority of the council is the issue, right? So 4 members would constitute a majority. And that night, we didn't have 4. We had an abstention. We had one person not voting. And so what you ended up with was what, 3?
3-1.
3-1. So if we had had 4 in person, then it would have been fine. That was the issue.
If you had.
If there were 4 people, 4 yes votes, regardless of online or in person, then it would have been fine, but there were only 3.
All right, so asked and answered.
You know,
We didn't invent this.
I'm just trying to think forward towards future things. So I guess what I'm hearing, it's confusing to me. I guess what I'm hearing is that for any issue going forward, for it to pass affirmatively, there must be 4 votes.
That's what I read.
Correct.
Yeah, I
If,
think
if there's a 7-member council.
I think there's a mistake there because I think.
Look, you can argue with Tim Fox. Let's just focus on Chris's comment.
Okay, that seems incredibly dubious, and so then now that has led us to this is why I'm questioning this, because this has led us to this situation. Community was, look how many people are not here today, that this was apparently taken care of, but it's not, and now it's back, and people are not here, assuming that it had been taken care of with this vote, establishing the quorum, taking the vote. There was a whole discussion about this last time, so this, I find this very irregular, and I wish Tim was here to defend his statement on that, because that doesn't make any sense to me. Okay,
But
moving.
Chris, nobody's trying to do something underhanded.
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that to have 4 votes, 4 positive votes to approve anything seems news to me. So, okay, let's move on to, could you put your letter up, Greg?
Okay.
It seems news to me, and it gives me concern for future votes on other issues not related to this issue. Okay, so I think everybody knows I was here last time. Like I'm personally invested 6 years of my life in this off-leash dog access. But I agree that the dog should not be in the tot lot or the child playground or whatever we want to call it. I could even possibly live with this letter, but I have a couple of issues with it. One is, I think this letter would need to be accompanied by some kind of specific visual. Because even in the discussion here, what's the tot lot? What's the split rail fence? What about this meadow? What about that meadow? What about any trails that they're not supposed to be on? This is not clear enough for me, and I think for other people, if it's gonna be approved under the banner of the MCC, I, as a member of the community, would like more specificity on what we're exactly talking about here. So I think a visual would be good. And then because it's still not even clear to me if we all know exactly what we're talking about with regard to this. So that's one. The split rail fence, the fence playground, the grass meadow that's not part of that, but is still next to the pump track. And then Michelle is saying, and across the gravel road to that other grass lot, anywhere that's not trails. That's, so I think a visual saying this exact thing right here. And then I think people should be able to see that before it gets voted on. So I guess I'm saying I would appreciate if this letter was not voted on tonight until we have that visual. The next thing would be, is there, I mean, I'm there all the time, but I guess I just don't look for it. Is there signage right now in that area saying that the dogs must be on leash in this area? There is no signage saying that at all. Are we certain of that?
I'm as certain as I could be, but I haven't been there for a week.
Okay, but the last time so
yes,
there are
signage there's signage on the fences which surround the pump track and surround the playground. Those signs are clear.
Yeah, and that say on leash.
And in fact, no dogs, I believe, inside that.
So where do we need the additional signage?
On the split rail fence area.
Right, and that's where I would be like, okay, and where is that exactly? And that's not in the inside the chain link fence of the pump track, and not inside the chain link fence of the playground.
Okay, so Chris,
do you have a map, Chris?
I didn't know that this was the the letter we were gonna have here. That the council wanted to approve.
All
And then
right.
I guess, oh, sorry.
Are you done?
No. And so then. If that, it's not clear to me exactly what you want. So Greg is saying no on the. I guess the meadow, but Michelle is saying. Everything that's not an approved
Kimberly.
trail.
Kimberly.
I'm sorry, so
It's
sorry,
okay.
I'm sorry. Kimberly. I don't know why I was saying Michelle.
No, all I'm saying
I
is
have a friend named
that,
Michelle Williams. Is your last name Williams? Yes, okay, there we go. Sorry,
So-
Kimberly.
so all I'm saying is that we should support it as county parks presented it. That's all I'm saying.
And I think that's all we can support, right? We can't make changes to what they're doing.
Correct.
We're not changing it. We're merely asking for signage in one
Absolutely.
area.
Yes. And I think that's where the
Okay,
confusion
back to you,
is.
Chris. I have 5 other people waiting. to come.
Right, signage in just that area, but not signage across the gravel road in that other grassy meadow?
That's right.
I'm all for being as clear as possible for everybody.
Right, but for this letter here today, we're just talking about the area that we have been discussing.
That's all we meant to talk about.
Do
I
you-
know, but.
Do you oppose signage? Is that, I mean, I'm
No,
just
no,
trying to
no,
understand the.
No,
process.
I just wanna, there's, your comments give me concern. Because there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, and if we held entire society to the letter of the law, we would all be in jail right now or under fine or whatever, nobody would be able to do anything. I see an eye roll there, but I mean, this is what I'm talking about, because I would say,
If there's no sign, you can do what you want.
I mean, are people required to stay on the trails only? Is that written in there? Can you go anywhere
Chris,
you want?
Chris, we have 5 other people waiting to make comments.
I hear
You
that, but-
use more than your 3 minutes.
Okay, but 5 people, I mean, we got rushed through the last
We
time.
can come
because there
back
were
to you
so many
again. We
people.
can come back to you
Okay,
again. Let me go
Okay,
to the other
but
5.
It's a legitimate question that I'm asking, like, are we gonna go with the letter of the law, the spirit of the law? Are humans allowed to go off the trails? Or should we hold them to the same standard?
All right, so, yeah, public comment from Fran.
Hi again. Yes. Did you get the letter we sent, Burnett and I sent a couple of days ago? With,
I believe I did, yes.
and did everybody see it on the council?
Yep.
We sent a new letter with just the points that we wanted to make and to clarify all this. And I just want to make a few points again right now, but before I do, I want to clarify this meadow versus the playground. The meadow is the big area where the pump track is. That's a meadow. It's a big area. That little playground area is not a meadow. That was all part of the original little park with the tot lot. It was one big area. The county divided it when they took over a few years ago with that fence down the middle. It's just a lot. It was all a horse corral, and we cleaned it all up and turned it into a park for the community. And so don't call that area above the tot lot a meadow. That is just the playground area. And that's the distinction we're making. That's where there are no signs. There is a sign, there's always been a sign in the tot lot, and people ignore that also. There's been one sign that says no dogs in this area. We're saying maybe the same thing should be part of the playground, or at least no off-leash dogs. And many people come every day and use that as a dog park, and that should not be used as a dog park. So let me just make my other comments. So I hope that clears it up. The meadow is where the pump track is. That's the playground is the 2 acres above the tot lot, and say above the tot lot. That's clearer. And all right. So anyway, we're hoping you support the no off-leash dogs in the tot lot and the playground. We're asking you to support increased and ongoing enforcement of no off-leash dogs in the 2 acre tot lot and the 2 acre playground above the tot lot. That 4 acre parcel must be treated as the special and unique parcel it is, and different from all the other areas in Quarry Park. It was designed and built especially for children, families, and groups to play in. with its tables, benches, barbecues, and playground equipment. It's the only park and playground of its kind in the entire unincorporated Midcoast, and which everyone has used as such ever since it opened 25 years ago. And since dogs have the use of all the rest of the 500 to 600 acres of Quarry Park, we don't think it's asking too much to keep those 4 little acres free of dogs, or at least off limits to off-leash dogs, and especially not be allowed to use it as a dog park. Even a spokesperson for the dog committee group at a previous meeting agreed there was no problem keeping dogs out of those 4 little acres. So again, please support no off-leash dogs in the 4-acre tot lot and playground with signs and ongoing enforcement. Thank you.
Okay, Burnett.
Okay, thank you. I was actually at the park in that area on Tuesday morning of this week. There are limited signs on the area that's enclosed by the green cyclone fence, which is considered the tot lot. The area above, the playground area above the tot lot, which has one side has that split rail fence on it to make it more for people to understand where it is. That is the playground area that we're talking about. There is no signage for that area that I saw anywhere along that area indicating any kind of dog use or not dog use. What we are basically asking is there's an ordinance that was put into effect to establish the pilot program that they accepted. And there is a San Mateo County ordinance that directs where off-leash dogs can be, where on-leash dogs can be, is generally throughout the park. There are specific areas designated for off-leash dog use. Excuse me. The Parks Department recently has increased enforcement of that ordinance by increasing off-leash education by the park rangers in the tot lot and playground area. But we need the continuation of that increased enforcement education by the rangers. They might be doing it now, but not in the future. That's why we're asking for increased enforcement, or in this case, continuing the increased enforcement, which is basically educating people of where the off-leash and on-leash areas are. And along with that is the increased signage, because without some kind of signage to give some kind of indication for people, it's hard for them to know unless they went and pulled the ordinance and read it. It isn't posted in the park anywhere that I saw, that they basically follow the rules that are established by the county on how to use that particular park. So there's really 2 actions that to better inform park visitors of the off-leash rules by the county ordinance, and that is, like I just said, the continuation of the education that's being done by the park rangers in the tot lot in that playground area above it, as well as increased signage to notify people that there are limitations as where the off-leash dogs are. The actual tot lot has the limited signs indicating no dogs at all allowed in the tot lot. We're asking that there be no off-leash dogs in the area above, and to enforce that as well as in the tot lot. That is what we're requesting. I personally support increasing areas designated for off-leash dogs use in the park. Of course, not in the tot lot or in the area that we just talked about above it, but that's going to require an ordinance change. If you don't like the ordinance the way it is, then have it changed. But the ordinance as it sits right now is there's no off-leash dogs in the tot lot or in that area. And we're just asking that now that the Parks Department has actually increased the enforcement of that they continue it. It's not going to be this month and gone, and that they increase the signage to help people know where they can't. Well, in this case, where they can't have off-leash dogs, and that the 2 particular areas that we're concerned about is the tot lot and the area above, which increased signage would help, but the continuation of the education of where the off-leash dogs can be would also help. Thank you.
Okay, Sid Young.
Thank you, Greg. I posted a sentence that I think you could follow the first letter with just one sentence, and it reads how the first your one line letter, and then however, public sentiment was expressed that signage is needed to alert the public that the area next to the tot lot is not to be used for off-leash dog play area. And Fran Pollard was nice enough to send me a screenshot of last time this was discussed. It was a chat from Nicholas, and I didn't see it, but he said, Sid, it is unclear to me what benefit additional fencing would provide, because I asked if they could make a separate, fence between the meadow and the tot lot for just the kid play area. And so he said, as for signage, I will look at additional opportunities next time I'm in the park. We do not have plans to extend off-leash access at this time. Thank you for your questions. And I replied, Nicholas, it is for the protection of the formerly dog-free area that kids play in just past the tot lot where people like to play fetch with their dogs. Maybe Quarry Park should have a separate play area for only dogs off-leash. It would only require some redesignated areas. So he didn't want to put up a fence. He wasn't opposed to putting up signage. So if you could add to the letter that you were requesting signage to verify, and you can go back and listen to the meeting too, because I think there were quite a few people concerned about the fact that kids are playing where dogs are playing, and it's unsanitary. It could be dangerous, depending on the dog and the adult that's watching the dog. So that's my suggestion. I just want to let you know in the chat, there's a person named Zoom user that would like to speak but doesn't know how to raise their hand. So after Amy, I guess there's somebody else that wants.
Okay, let me go to Amy Teza, and then we'll get to the Zoom user, and we'll go back to Chris.
Hi, I was wondering if I can get a feeling for how pervasive an issue this is. How many individuals have you heard from regarding this tot lot versus playground versus meadow issue?
My sense would be Fran Burnett and one other person who wrote recently.
I've been over there and had people say things to me.
Right.
Unsolicited.
Actually, I've also in person had somebody complain to me when I was there. There's a fellow who regularly exercises 2 dogs in that split rail fence area off leash, and that I had a complaint made to me there. But I can't tell you, out of the universe of 11,000 people in the Midcoast area, what percentage are of this opinion. But I'm just saying
it seems like it's a pretty small problem, and that grassy area, if you want to call it a playground above the tot lot. I walk at Quarry Park a lot, and I rarely see kids playing around in that area. Actually, the only time I can recall is a kid playing with a dog in that area. So it seems like a pretty limited problem. I mean, I have no qualms with you saying no dogs except for on leash. And I don't think most of the other dog people would either. Although the meadow by the pump track has traditionally been a place where people could let their dogs run back and forth and catch a ball. So that might be a different story. But anyway, I just wanted to get a feeling for if this was a huge issue or not. And thank you very much.
Okay.
Just quickly, not to interrupt, Greg, but we represent a group in El Granada, and that's just not me and Fran.
Okay. Do you want to speak to how many people it is, Fran?
There's about a dozen, I think.
Okay.
The neighborhood. Also, just real quick, we sent pictures. So if you want to send the pictures, there's 22 pictures, I think, of all the activities in that park, including the people that come with the dogs and people kids are not going to go in there when people are playing with their dogs running around and using it as a dog park, not just playing.
Right,
And
I
they'll
understand
play
that.
in there for an hour at a time with several dogs at a time. So it's turning into a dog park. And we're saying that's a unique area, different from the whole rest of the 500-acre park. So just those 4 little acres can be off limits to dogs, or
All right.
at least off limits to off leash dogs.
I don't see any other Zoom comments.
Oh, Greg, I just want to mention that Nicholas did say the only place that dogs are allowed off leash are on the trails. He said that at the last meeting. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember.
Okay, thanks.
Chris,
Yeah.
did you want to make any final comment here before we go back to the council?
The community comments have been very helpful, I think, because what I see is one, it's an issue of communication or miscommunication in terms of the language being used. The different terminology being used for these areas makes it confusing. Okay, so in hearing, and I would say that as part of the dog committee, yeah, that was a very important that the kids playing in the tot lot, that there should be, whatever the ordinance is, no dogs in there. As I'm understanding it from what Fran said, so right next to that, but if we walk into the parking lot, there's a road that goes up here, the tot lot, and I guess this grassy playground are to the right. Then there's a road that goes off to the left towards the pump track. There's a little grassy area in this wedge there. That's not what we're talking about.
Correct.
Right?
We're not.
Okay, exactly. That's why I feel like I agree with the statement that there should be signage, additional signage for the area to the right of the parking lot, the tot lot, this playground meadow. There needs to be standardization of terminology for that, and the additional signage, because what I have seen is we're not even, it took us a while to all get on the same page in here as to what we're talking about. People that don't live here, that come to the park every once in a while, they see an open grassy area, they take their dog over there. Great. I mean, they think it's great. So if we had that additional signage there, yeah, lots of signs, because here's why I support that. One, I don't want negative interactions, but two, it makes it easier for a citizen to say to another person who maybe has their dog there, hey, you're not supposed to do that. I've seen interactions where somebody tried to say you're not supposed to have their dog there, and they basically got the, F you, don't tell me what to do. It doesn't, I'll take my dog wherever. If there's ample signage and it's very clear to everybody exactly what we're talking about over here, I think that's a good thing. So what I would ask from your letter is if we had a visual that went with the letter and some standardization of terminology so we know exactly what we're talking about. Maybe even instead of saying the area above the tot lot, if we said the area, to the whatever it is, the south and the west of the parking lot, maybe even some GPS coordinates or something, so that you're like, this is exactly what we're talking about and everybody's clear. And
Okay.
Then I would be in support of the letter that you have, because it's not I'm not against additional signage. I'm not against restricting that area as it's supposed to be. It's just, it's not clear to people. And that was my concern on this. So
All right.
thank you for the additional time.
All right, we have somebody named Zoom user who doesn't know how to raise their hand that wishes to make a public comment. Can you identify yourself, please? Zoom user.
Let me know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, terrific. Thanks. This is Chris Tyler.
Chris. Okay.
I just wanted to comment, I appreciate all the comments that have been here. We only have a handful of people who are left on the meeting. There were a huge amount of people at the previous meeting. And so if the choice is to send the letter that was adopted at the end of that meeting that was hugely represented by the community versus send a different letter which presumably includes the comments or some of the views of the community, I think it should reflect what the actual input was on the last meeting. The last meeting was overwhelmingly in support of this off-leash dog walking in Quarry Park. And the vast majority of the comments were about how we need much more than that. And so if we're going to adopt a letter that includes additional comment from the community, I would suggest that it says, not only do we support off-leash dog walking in Quarry Park, but we feel that there is a substantial need to expand dog access to additional parks commensurate with other communities. I think that's a better reflection of what the input of the community was on the last meeting. That's all I had to say. Thanks very much.
All right, thanks, Chris. Okay, now closing public comment. So what we have is a letter with a imprecise description of the location, and we could vote on it as it is, or we could suggest an amendment. If I were going to do something, I would get rid of the word tot lot, because I just think that's confusing now, you know, in the spirit of this letter. And I would say something like a small field bordered with a split rail fence adjacent to the fence playground, and leave it at that. In terms of having a visual, I don't have time to get a visual and include it right now. We would have to bring this up again for another vote. So I'm going to suggest if we just clarify this language, we could pass this letter. Kimberly?
I think in the parks report, didn't it have a diagram
Yeah.
that had these designations on it?
There was a map. I don't remember seeing any clarity on this specific location in that map, but I don't have it in front of me. So, and that's the problem. So we could either pen this entire thing, not come back to it ever. We could pen it and come back with a map, or we could adjust the language in this letter, vote on it, and call the meeting. So do I have any ideas on how you would change the language here?
I typed something into the chat if you want
I know
to
you did.
consider it.
I already seen that.
Okay.
I think just getting rid of tot lot would take care of it.
Okay, get rid of the word tot lot. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Do we have to motion, Claire?
We have to move an amendment to drop the phrase parenthesis tot lot, close parenthesis from the letter. We have to have a second for that amendment. We have to vote on the amendment.
And I still move.
Okay, you move.
Okay,
I'll second your motion.
hold on a second.
Okay, she moved an amendment to drop the tot lot from this letter. I seconded it. Now we discuss that.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so Claire moved to remove tot lot from
Right.
the letter.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, Kimberly?
So I'm okay with that. I you know, this, it says, but request additional signage to clarify off-leash restrictions. And that to me says, you know, that covers everything. And so maybe at that point we say, especially the areas where children designated for children and families.
So what you're proposing is an amendment to the amendment.
Oh, God.
Well,
Write this down.
I mean, to avoid this small field bordered with a split rail fence, I think Chris is right. That doesn't really tell you anything.
It tells me.
It tells you, but I've been there and I can tell you there's a couple of areas where you could get that confused.
Adjacent to the fence playground? That's quite clear to me. Split rail fence adjacent.
there.
Yeah,
If you think it's clear, then.
I do. But if you want to propose another amendment.
Nicholas knows.
Yes,
All right,
Parks
next-
knows.
Nicholas knows.
Yeah.
Do we have any other discussion on the amendment to the letter?
Let's just vote on it.
Okay, call the vote on the amendment to this letter.
Okay, so we're voting on the amendments to this letter, Greg,
Yes.
Claire.
Yes. Yes.
Gus, Kimberly,
I'm gonna abstain.
okay. Dan,
Yes.
I'm gonna vote yes.
Okay, so we have
2, 3.
5 votes in favor. Ann is not voting. Now we have an amended letter and we need a vote on the letter.
I move we vote on the letter.
Okay,
You don't have to, it's already.
Oh, it's already,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
This is just
so-
a question, are we ready to vote on the letter? And I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Scott, call the vote on the letter.
okay, so we're voting on the letter now. Greg,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Kimberly,
I'm abstaining again.
okay. I'm gonna vote yes. And Dan,
Yes.
Okay, so we have five,
5 yeses, 1
Five.
abstention.
but one abstention, and one non-voting, so it's 5-4 the letter.
That's
5
perfect.
in favor, 0 against.
That's perfect.
Okay.
All right. So that completes item 4B. We now have council member activity to.
We have to go back to the minutes, or did we, what are we doing with that?
The minutes, did we not approve that? We approved the minute.
Pulled one.
We pulled one on,
That was the last
the
one I
one we
submitted
pulled,
to you.
yes, the
No.
one we pulled, my suggestion on that is we not approve those minutes until I and others have a chance to go through them. I don't want to particularly approve those right
That's
now.
the one I just gave to you, like.
The one you gave to
Monday.
Monday?
Yeah, let's pull that. That's
Yeah,
fine.
okay. Any problem with leaving those until next meeting?
Is that what you're saying?
I'm suggesting leave those.
To vote on.
No, I don't care.
Okay, we're gonna
That's
leave.
fine. That'll give me, yeah, it's cool.
Okay, good.
And I'll try to get another one out there, so we'll have more.
Don't forget
Dude,
May, Lisa's after for something in May.
Was that an official meeting or an extra?
It
meeting?
must have been a meeting. She wouldn't bother us if it weren't.
No, I
Okay,
see that.
council
I'm
member,
confusion. What are you proposing now? You already pulled it. We're gonna vote on it.
No,
next
no, we're just
No, it's
clarifying.
hold it, and we're not gonna vote on it today.
Okay.
All right, council member activity, who wants to start?
I don't have anything to report.
Okay. I will, in the interest of time, not give my usual update. Is that dangerous? I'm just thinking of whether I should or should not mention some stuff that's going on. I'll just suspend it for now. Okay, so there's no council member activity to discuss. Future agendas. I will note we have a very full meeting next meeting, October 25th. We have both the herbicide issue and the Montero Mountain update. I don't see room for anything else on the agenda for the 25th. Any comments on that?
So for the 25th, we have California State Parks. Well, there will be 2 presenters who will talk to us about state parks part in the road maintenance and their and answer questions for the public.
Are you gonna have a letter at that time?
I do have a letter, yes.
Okay, I can't wait to see it because your investigative journalism has been cited elsewhere as a thing of
It's been an evolving letter. So,
right.
yeah.
Okay,
Now I have 2 other things here, 2 other items for discussion. I'd like to just revisit very briefly that how to handle hate speech if it happens. I mean, I was traumatized by what happened in Pacifica.
you want to do it on the 25th of October?
No, just I want to put that on some upcoming meeting.
Okay, put it down in the spreadsheet for November and
You know, so
hopefully
that-
by then we will have some guidance from the county, which will inform the discussion.
Perfect,
What
so that
happened?
we're prepared.
Nazis.
There was a barrage of hate speech. I think they had over 30 people on the public
I
comment.
heard 17.
Well, they cut it off.
Oh,
People lined up to do mean things.
It was on Zoom.
Is it true? I think I heard somebody say that, this was like audio.
It was
that-
horrible. It
No,
was
this
just,
was like computer generated voice.
I didn't hear that.
it was a mixture of computer generated, they were there. I'm so sad for you. That was
Yeah,
awful.
so
It-
it was like an attack.
It was an attack.
Yeah.
So, at some point we should.
Let's put it
look
on
at
the
what's
November,
recommended and make sure that we're prepared.
put it on November 8th.
But,
Wait a second, all these other things, you sign up, you gotta check this box, you gotta identify which picture has a street light in it, and I am not a robot. So can't we have you have to, is there a way that we can?
Let's
identify-
have this discussion on November 8th.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So that's why I want to add that to our.
Okay, anything else?
Do we only have 3 meetings for the rest of the year?
Oh, let me just frame that. I'm told by people who are veteran that normally the MCC only has 1 meeting in November and 1 in December.
Oh,
This year, we got a late start. We were short 2 members forever, and then we were hit with a barrage of things, just an absolute barrage. So I'm open to having a second meeting in November, but I'm also willing to take a sense of counsel on whether or not we try not to give us all some rest and catch up on minutes. In December, I would.
I consider that, we need to bring this, it sounds like hate speech to me.
In December,
It's so mean.
in December, I think we would also like to have one meeting, but again, I have to say, if stuff comes up, the business of the community has to take priority. So that's just my framing thought, and the council can decide what they want to do about.
So we have one meeting in, you're saying one meeting in November,
November
possibly
8th?
two, and then only one in December.
That's what I'm suggesting. November 8th would be followed by what's 14 on top of 8?
Seems like a
22.
tall.
22.
It's Thanksgiving.
Well, we definitely ought to have a meeting without Gus here. Oh, Thanksgiving is the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay, so that sort of makes it even harder to have a second
So
meeting.
we'd have to have a second meeting, we'd have to have it on a
Special
different
meeting.
date, a
Yes.
special meeting. I'm okay either way. I think we have a lot of things. I have one other item I wanted to have is a Veterans Day speaker.
Veterans Day speaker.
I want to raise awareness because we have veterans on the coast side. This came up before. And just talk about veterans on the coast side, how many there are, what are the services offered. It doesn't have to be a big thing. And just sort of a recognition that, you know, of Veterans Day.
So you're proposing that for November 8th?
Veterans Day is what, the 11th?
I don't know.
It is.
So it would have to be the 8th.
Okay. So put it on the spreadsheet. We can discuss this again
I mean, it
on
could
our
be like
meeting on the 25th.
you know, 20 minutes.
Okay. No, I understand. My father served and I would have served, except they thought I had leukemia. So I got out.
Your brothers.
No.
I tried, I was rejected, but my brother went to West.
Any other comments on future agendas?
Can I ask when stormwater's coming up, Greg?
Well, I'm hoping that would be November 8th also.
Fran had her hand up over there.
Fran Pollard, I'm sorry, I don't have the Zoom screen up in front of me.
Can you hear me, Fran?
Fran Pollard, future agenda comment.
Well, as I asked before about the harbor and shoreline, I think before the big storms hit and wash out the highway altogether, I think we better discuss that. And hopefully, I guess November 8th would be the one if you can do it, or the. Yeah, you've got next week. I mean, your next October 25th is full, so November 8th, harbor and shoreline. I mean, my main thing is to discuss that sinkhole and fixing that before the storms hit.
Now, this is related to Surfers Beach, right?
Yeah, it's on the coastal trail.
Okay, so Len Erickson, just so some of you know, has been working on a variety of things related to transportation, and he's got a little bit of a list that made some sense to me, showing everything that's going on, not going on, should be going on in the Surfers Beach area. So I think Fran's comment, that's a nominee to cover on November 8th, that transportation impacts of Surfers Beach and stuff.
Area?
That's my area.
Okay.
So I'll let Len talk to Gus, but I mean, I think we can blend that in there, Fran.
Thank you.
Dan.
On that, I took a picture of that exact location. I think it was about 3 years ago, might have been 4 years ago. When it started, it's a slow process of erosion. Yes, this last year, it got worse in one year, but it's I emailed that picture 3 years ago to Len. He showed interest. And so he's kind of on it. But this kind of stuff, Caltrans, oh, Mike's gone, puts things in the shredder, right? They don't respond. They keep it in-house. You can talk here as much as you want. They're gonna eventually fix it.
I think the idea that we'll have to write a letter to punctuate this in November is necessary. I do have some faith that if the road fails, Caltrans will fix it.
So,
But they'll wait till it fails.
Yes, but yes,
That's
wait till it
usually what they do.
wait. This is
I can
overlapping.
give you a whole list of licenses.
This is overlapping.
Remember that they have to revisit their sea level rise. I don't know what it's called now. Sorry, I'm so tired. contract, whatever it is, they have to, the permit, the coastal permit for the armoring of the road in that section comes up again in 2025 or 2026. So they're in the process now of looking at renewing that permitting. So that's an opportunity which impacts the road, and they'll be looking at whether to consider moving the road or some other solution.
So, you know, if it collapses, they'll armor it and repave it as an
Well,
emergency.
I mean, there's
That's,
other things going on, right? This overlaps with the surface beach sand replenishment
I
project.
think a causeway is another alternative.
So,
on.
What's a causeway?
Well,
Like
elevated road.
so it's a little more than just the transportation
Underpass.
piece that we're talking about.
Okay, but does this affect our agenda planning? We're gonna cover this topic on November 8th.
It depends on the scope that you want to cover, because the things that Dan just mentioned go beyond.
Well, why don't we have a offline work group, consider the scope and come back on October 25th to refine the scope of the November 8th presentation.
Okay.
And with that,
adjournment.
I ask if there's a reason to not adjourn. By acclamation, then we are adjourned.
Well, if we got to ask, objection.
Oh, thank you.